Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is Cee, Certified Brewhead.
And I am Nathan from Nathan Does Beer.
And welcome to episode 184 of Beer and Other Shit, the podcast Adjunct series. Nate, we're going to a farm tonight, buddy.
We're going to the farm.
We're going to the farm. This is a great one, guys. This is a brewery that I was fortunate enough to visit. I think it was August, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a phenomenal experience. I was telling Nate all about it. And then I was like, we got to get these guys on. It was, I feel like
you were raving
really,
about it.
And you will be once you try all these damn beers, which actually we were introduced to these lovely folks, their beer at least, on the pod with Evan from the World Brew last year.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I had actually had one several years ago, back when I had a BrewBox subscription. That was my that was my first taste of it, but that's going back quite some time. But yes, another one from them, their Wit, I believe it was, what we had on the episode with Evan from the Wheel Brew.
You are correct, and Evan was extraordinarily complimentary, and he kind of planted the seed, and it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, all right, well, that's in the list now, and let's try and get out there. So yeah, it's very cool. I imagine that just like I do, both of us really enjoy. I like the whole concept of this, farm brewery where a lot of the ingredients used in the beers are grown on the property, and I just think that's like, isn't that dope? Isn't that so cool?
Oh,
it's
yeah,
such an awesome thing. So
yeah, it's like very much the beer version of like farm to table, more farm to glass, I guess.
Exactly right. Exactly. And that's something that, I guess it was really big in Vermont. I'm not sure as much out here, but it's,
for sure.
It's just like a cool concept. Anyway, we're going to get into it because we could rave about these folks all night. So let's bring this in. Let me make sure I'm doing this as smooth as humanly possible. One of these days I'm going to get it good, Nate. I promise. Guys, please welcome Gail and Phil from GoodLot in the building.
Hi.
Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic.
We're
Thank
good.
you for joining us.
Cee and Nate, this is so awesome. Can't wait to drink a beer.
Oh, well, you're in the right place, guys.
That's right.
It's fantastic GoodLot beers. Let's get that going right away. We're going to get into your, is this fair to say it's your flagship?
That would definitely be our flagship, the Farmstead Ale, for sure.
Beautiful.
Yes, and this is the one that I've had before, back in the BrewBox years back.
Gotcha. So this is a 6.2%, essentially, like calling it a pale ale, particularly. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it was designed to be a pale ale, and it's. I mean, the origin of this beer specifically, we designed when we first started wanting to put our hops and using our groundwater as the basis of the beer. We started with 3 different styles of beer that we really liked, and pale ales were definitely one of them. And this is the one that, on the very final day of trying these beers, we're like, oh, I really feel like this is unique and it's strong. We seem to be somewhat against the current at the time. And it was driven by the fact that we grow primarily Nugget and Cascade hops here.
Okay.
And our water, we're like, okay, so let's create what that wants. Farmstead Ale. Ooh, nice.
Cheers.
Cheers, you guys.
Cheers, guys. Yes. We got him here. Cheers, y'all. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great nose.
Definitely the first beer we ever released, though. I mean, it was the first, well, 2 LCBO SKUs we have, but it was the first one that was in there. There was always in 750 ml bottles originally.
Oh, wow.
And we still love it. Still feels like our child in some ways.
Yeah.
So we didn't design it. We were just the consulting farmers to the design, which is obviously done by the head brewers that we've worked with over time, including like Paul Dickey, who was one of the first guys. We're like, oh, I'll design an amber for you guys. We love ambers. No one seems to make them. And Paul's like, oh, I'll make one. And that was one of our other beers that we released. But yeah, first one.
Ooh.
Flagship.
I would say it still runs as my go-to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And for the value of like one after work, one and done, it's pretty great.
Yeah, that's true. That's 6.2. And it's like
6.2.
I don't know.
Yep.
6.2. New England style yeast to push up all the sort of citrus attributes of the Cascades, particularly. I mean, it's sort of like 2-to-1 Cascades nugget through the recipe, all the way through the dry hopping. And, it just has that, it could be IPA based on the strength, I guess, in some ways, but pale ale category. And yeah, we love this beer.
I was going to ask about that. Is there like, I mean, I feel like it's a bit of a fluctuating definition anyway, and it varies per brewery. Do you guys do you know why the brewer ended up? Was it you guys who called it a pale ale, or the original brewer who created the recipe?
I would say it was probably the guy who created the recipe, who was living on our farm. A guy named James Windsor, who we don't see that much anymore. He's out west now, and he's in wine, I think, instead. He and his partner built a yurt on the back of our farm. Cool. And during that process, we started piloting beers on the back porch and cellaring in the basement. And yeah, he was the one who was very pale ale oriented in terms of what this beer was. So I've never questioned it. And I'm not, certified in any major beer jargon at all. So, I just sounds good to me.
Makes sense. And this does have the Cascade and the Nugget that you mentioned. So the, what do you call it? Like estate hops? Is that fair to call it that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the right terminology. What do you call it? I think
it's like a wine term. Yeah. Because it's grown.
Yeah, grown. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're not, originally, in all candor, originally when we first released this beer to the LCBO in particular, thankfully someone smarter than us was like, you need to stop using just your own hops. You need to go find some other suppliers in Ontario because you're going to be out of hops altogether. Which 100%, it was always it was just 15 kg and 10 kg in every batch. And all of a sudden you realize, wow, our little 2.5 acre hop farm couldn't keep up. So we went out and started working with all of our partners in the hop industry, starting with Big Head hops, particularly now with that crew up in Meaford.
Meaford, yeah.
Okay. So keep it local. Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry.
So go on, Nate.
Oh, it wasn't a question. I was just saying, so those hops go fast from the sounds of it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it obviously depends on the recipe, but we have found, 3 other hop farms all located in Ontario, and we really love how they grow them, and so we partnered with them. But we do still use our hops in every brew.
Yeah, our beer, our hops, but it's not 100% our hops.
Yeah,
exactly. In this beer, in fact, maybe the short cans, maybe 100% our hops, but the rest would all be blends of up to 3 hop farms, from Ontario. But worth noting, we might get into this as we talk, that, this whole hop industry that's had this massive bell curve, the 2 suppliers that we worked with primarily out of the gates, Big Head Hops and Clear Valley Hops, both left the industry altogether 3 years ago. Yeah. Oh. And we certainly had relationships with a bunch of other hop farms, through the Ontario Hop Growers Association. And so we quickly had to pivot, holy shit, who's growing nugget to supplement what we're doing? And that was a bit of a frightening moment when our main suppliers decided this is not worth it, not enough support in the beer industry. We're just not going to bother killing ourselves growing hops anymore, which is part of the reason why we pivoted 7 years ago to add beer to the farm, because it's vertically integrating, it's diversifying, climate change with crops and no crop insurance for hops at that time. I don't know if we should put all our eggs in this basket, and the lack of support that we kind of saw out of the craft beer industry. We're going to show Ontario hops and try to drive people to Ontario hops and show that they're high quality ingredients and try to help our brothers and sisters in that agricultural industry as much as possible. It's kind of the idea.
I love that.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like most people wouldn't immediately gravitate towards the local. They would probably go to the larger suppliers from the States or whatever. So I like that a lot. It feels organic and authentic to your, the farm vibe where, you're growing other things from the product. So it would make sense that you would want to support, fellow small local businesses like yourselves, which is very cool.
Yeah, and I think also just having come into the industry from that farming perspective, we, like you said, ultimately wanted to support quality growers, growers that we knew were growing really great stuff, there wasn't a need to go outside of the province. Like you can, like every beer we've ever produced has only been Ontario hops. So hiring a brewer can be hard because a lot of brewers kind of go, what? You're not going to let me use
Mosaic? What?
And the ones that we have found have been up for the challenge in that capacity of limitation ultimately, which is not an easy sell originally. Like, oh, what I can only use. I'm like, yep, that's sort of our mandate. But
interesting. Yeah, I can imagine that being a challenge for a brewer who's used to maybe, all these punchy tropical things from P&W or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that, I guess that takes even more skill to need to be able to turn the local stuff, which is limited. And we learned this when we were talking to hop farmers a few years ago, that they're all like proprietary. Like you can't just grow Galaxy or whatever. Like you have to, like, they're all completely like landlocked, and because of the R&D, like millions of dollars of R&D. So I get it. But the ones that are, Nate.
Sorry for interrupting.
No.
And of course, the terroir of all of these different growing locations, makes a big difference in the crop too.
100%. And it was interesting when we first sold our hops to other brewers, because that was what we did for 7 years before GoodLot started. They always used to tell us how great our Cascade was. And interestingly, a Cascade grown up in Meaford is slightly different, like in aroma and its characteristics, and they're in a sort of an agrobiodome, which is different than ours, different soil, all of it. So yeah, terroir is a real thing in hops. We know that now.
We do now, but I mean, not to nerd out on hops, but we can talk about hops.
Oh, please.
Right.
Please do.
When we first trained, when we decided to become, like, Gail and I bought this farm 15 years ago, which was where Gail grew up we're in Caledon. Gail grew up in Caledon. And so when we were both in Toronto at the time and decided, let's run off and be farmers, because we were farming our backyards and loved the idea of just romantic, crazy in love at the time and newly pregnant. We're just like, let's go buy a farm and become farmers. And through that journey as total beginner farmers, I've completely lost my frame of mind right now in terms of what I was just talking about there.
Hops.
Crazy.
We
were trained. So we went down, we worked with a company called Gorst Valley down in Wisconsin. This guy, James Altweis, who is one of the leaders in hops. And then Rebecca Keane, we got to throw out and just give big praise to Rebecca Keane from Left Field Farms out in BC. She wrote a manual 20 years ago about starting a small organic hop yard. And it was the only resource you could basically get on the internet at the time that explained, here's what you need to do, here's all the equipment, here's all the pieces, here's how you farm, here's how you take care, here's how you harvest. And that 20-page, starters thing, Rebecca is our favorite person for that reason. She's helped so many people get started in the industry. What is the name of her brewery? Cranach Ales. Her and her husband have been doing it for 20 years. They own a little brewery out, I feel like it's Sunshine Coast, called Cranach Ales. It makes mostly British style ales, and sells at farmers markets out there. So they got everyone started. But our training at Gorst Valley was like, there's no terroir to hops, which sounds crazy, and we're a total neophyte farmers. Like, okay, whatever. James, he's a PhD and plant biology. And so we're like, okay. And then when we came home, we started talking to Nicholas Shout at Big Head Hops and the other 5 growers that we met when we came back to start doing this. And they were like, of course there's terroir to hops. How can there not be? This is the whole element of oil, earth, microclimate. We're like, okay, there's terroir. And then when Gail started getting this feedback, particularly about Cascades from brewers being like, I don't know, they're just really unique, and there's this melon property, and like, okay, there's terroir. And that was sort of that first thought of, well, what if we chase terroir with beer and tried to make that more prominent in the beer industry in some ways, chase that wine vibe in some ways. And that's kind of what set the whole thing off. 100% our hops, 100% Ontario hops now, is just to make sure there's that base element of terroir and I'm feeling that first beer already. I should have had dinner first, eh?
Oh, you didn't eat?
But sorry, I drag on. I'm sorry.
No, dude, you're great. You're
my
good.
goodness, no, don't be sorry.
Yeah, and definitely
This is the place for that.
if you got snacks, like if you
Right,
haven't
right.
eaten, you got to need some snacks. We always make sure to eat beforehand because this is you need that foundation. Yeah, maybe we should start adding that to the emails and be like, hey guys, make sure you grab
you
a
eat
little-
first.
have a little
We
something
had a
before.
big lunch today. We had a
Okay,
big lunch.
as long as you're good. That's amazing. That's actually a pretty good segue to sort of getting into your beer story. But yeah, this just want to point. This beer is fantastic. I can see why this is the flagship. It's just like a great, like balanced, like essentially it drinks like a pale ale. So I can see why it's not like punching you in the face like a typical. It's definitely more like the West Coast style, which that's something that Nate and I are both extraordinarily into. And I'm feeling like it's got like a nice little bit of bite. It's a great malty body, but it's quite pale, which is great. Super crushable, nice, like you're saying with your Cascade, with a few little like tropical little hits in there, herbal, grassy, balance. This is really good. Definitely would not have thought it would be 6.2. It's
I know it's problematic.
That's the common feedback. You don't taste the ethanol really. Like you don't really get that part of it, and then it's it's fairly balanced and approachable. It's kind of I used to drink Fin du Monde as my first beer on a Friday night all the time. Like I really loved getting the kick of alcohol. Okay, first beer, and I'm just going to mellow out with some Pilsners. And I feel like this beer kind of fulfills that obligation. We call it sunshine in a can, double entendre, I guess. Both its color, it's the can itself, and it's also, it's a nice little kick of alcohol.
And one of the funnest, is that a word? Funnest? The most fun thing that we that we did when we started the business was the branding was so much fun to work on. And shout out to Laura Wills, who's done all of our branding, like from the logo to packaging to everything. But it was just so exciting when this came out because I just loved, and this can now doesn't have it because we've gone in higher volume, but it used to have a wrap label and it was embossed. So it had this real tactile feel to it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that.
Loved it. Anyway, so that embossment is gone, but anyway, yeah, it was really fun working with Laura on and still it to this day. But anyway, seeing that can, in the LCBO for the first time with the sunflowers.
Pretty weird.
Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty strange, eh? That'd be a pretty, I guess it's like almost like a whoa, like a full circle. Like, hey, I started drinking all the stuff from here, and now the product that we worked on with our team, you guys put together with hops that you grew in your soil. That's pretty sick. It must be incredible.
It is sick. And like the earlier version of this was, as Phil mentioned, a 750 ml wine bottle. And in the early days, it was staying up till 1 a.m, hand labeling,
Ooh, okay.
Which
Old
is
school.
fun now when I think about it, but like I'm happy those days are done.
Yeah.
You guys have you've earned your stripes then. You did it the hard way.
Oh yeah.
And now you're moving on to that. I love it. So then let's get into the story, because I'm really curious to hear how it all came together, and then we can get sort of deeper on a bunch of these things that we've touched on already. How did you both first get introduced to craft beer, and how did that lead to the formation of the brewery?
Yeah. Oh, this is a long piece.
Well, let me go first. I didn't really know your craft beer journey aside from you and I drinking two more together. But I have a buddy named Brendan Powell who literally probably back in grade 11 was handing me Upper Canada dark beers. You got to try this. And I was drinking Molson Dry. I think at the time was my go-to, Molson Dry. And it's either Upper Canada, others, but he just kept putting these beers in front of me. I went to university with him. We were both in Kingston. He was like, come down to this brewery in downtown Kingston and drink these beers with me.
Stone City?
Yeah. Not Stone City, man. I'm way older than that. It was like the Kingston Brewing Company. It's like this big old house pub. It's the weirdest, most awesome place downtown Kingston. And that's where my journey started. But I was obviously buying cheap beer as much as I could through university. But then I moved to Colorado that was where it came to me. Like I moved to Colorado in 1996. Seems like forever ago now, but 96, and the craft beer revolution was just hitting in Colorado at that point. Right. And it went on and on. It, sort of spawned out of California, Oregon, coming across the country. And then I worked for this guy, John Hickenlooper, who opened the first brew pub in Denver called the Wind Coop. And I remember him handing me this beer, the super, I didn't know what the ABV was on at the time, but a dark beer that had bull testicles in it or something like that.
Come on.
Wow. No, seriously. You've never heard of it before?
No, I have never.
Wow. Colorado bull testicles. Sorry, maybe this is getting a bit too raw, but and then he said, "Be careful. It's 10.5%." I was like, I never heard that before.
And you were a mile high.
Oh, an oyster stout. It is. It's a real thing. It's the bull testicles in the Rocky Mountain oyster stout from Wind Coop.
That's it.
Phil is not lying.
Yeah.
Continue.
And
you just got fact checked.
Yeah, totally. But Hickenlooper was an inspiration as well. To Colorado, I got my taste of craft beer in Colorado because there was so much amazing beer, and we did this microbreweries for the environment event every year in Boulder. Big concert, amazing bands, and there'd be like 20 craft breweries from across Colorado would show up, and it was just like, I just really turned me on. I loved the people, and I loved the beer. The beer was amazing. So that's how my craft beer journey began.
Awesome.
That's cool.
And I would say mine was in Toronto, and I was living like Queen and Sherbourne. So Duggan's original location on Victoria.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Victoria, that kept changing hands. It was like 3 or 4 different things. Yeah.
But it ended up kind of being my local, and I was like, oh, this is so interesting. This is, stuff that I had never had before. And then also Amsterdam, the original Amsterdam location at King, the one that was downstairs. King and, it was, oh God, I don't know Toronto anymore. King and Bathurst, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's in the house.
I don't remember
the overpass.
And it was in the basement. And so this was probably early 2000s, late 90s. Anyway, yeah. So those were 2 places that I had frequented. But what's funny now, because I was still pretty, high, like not zeroed in, but I was kind of drinking Keith and Creemore, thinking that they were kind of more craft beer.
Creemore, yeah.
And then it wasn't really until till BAOS came out that the lug tread in the little pack, and then I was like, oh my God, what is this? I love it. I love the packaging. And then I started diving in deeper. But that was not really. But 15 years ago.
We're only 27 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are drinking young. That's you guys are like OGs. This is like I don't know about you, Nate. I was drinking beer in Australia. I'm from Australia, and I only really got into it 2011. So it's always interesting hearing the stories from pre that time, because I feel like it's almost like when we got into it, and Nate, you were about the same time, right?
Around the same time. I kind of dipped my toes in it when without even really having a concept of what it was when I was in university. So around 2008, 2009, I went to school in Waterloo and had my first taste of Waterloo Dark at from Brick Brewery out there. So I didn't even have a sense of what craft beer was, but that was probably officially my first taste of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, there was one called Little Creatures in Australia as well that we used to just buy. So it was like they were cheap, and there were the tall bottles, and they were like it was a pale ale, and I had it recently, and it tastes like nothing. But at the time, I was like, oh wow, this is so bitter. So either way, though, it was like a time when when we started focusing on beer. It's really cool to hear those stories and see when I don't remember. I moved to Toronto in 2010, so I don't remember the Amsterdam downstairs, but that's because there must have been 3 to 10 breweries or something of craft that you would have access to.
Not very many. The Granite was another one.
Granite, Great Lakes, probably.
Yeah.
Wellington.
Wellington would have been in business 35, 37 years now. What about
Nickelbrook?
Open then back then?
The Only was open, but I didn't know if they, I don't remember if
like
they
2
carried.
craft beer bars in Toronto back then. Yeah.
So the Only's the OG cafe. Eh? I didn't realize Only was like been around forever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. What was the other one?
Forever.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. Yeah.
Okay. I love that place.
But speaking of Wellington, or Waterloo, I should say, they, in university, when I was in university, I drank Red Baron. I don't know if that beer even.
I remember that.
Do you remember Red Baron?
Yeah,
it was
I remember that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it was a very inexpensive beer, and I think that was sort of my go-to at university. But I think it was done by Waterloo.
It was, yeah. That one was also at Brick, and that's another one I remember from university as well. Like when a few of our engineer friends would throw keg parties, it would often be with kegs of Red Baron.
Oh, I totally remember this, and it was just a lager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's cool.
But I don't think it still exists. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't. Because all of that's been been amalgamated under Waterloo Brewing now, and I think the Red Waterloo. Yeah, like and the Red Baron name was done long ago, I think.
Yeah.
A bit of a legacy beer. Interesting. So this is fascinating. So then you both sound like independently got into beer around the same time, exploring, learning. But I imagine neither of you had aspirations of being involved in the industry. It was probably just like something fun to do.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that I got excited by those packaging.
Yeah. It was very unique.
Kind of revolutionary, right? Anyway, I remember getting excited about that. But because the thought of owning a brewery was so far removed, but I loved working the soil. So I was like, oh, I can get into brewing or beer through farming. Like I can grow the ingredients. So when we bought this property, we had 30 acres, and I was like, what are we going to do? And you were like, well, why don't we do hops? And I was like, well, maybe we should grow vegetables. So we did that the first year. We did both, remember? I sold to the market, and then we did our little test plot. And then, but then I fell in love with hops because they're an amazing plant. They're kind of romantic. And I fell in love, and we went that direction.
Okay.
Let's be clear, there was no intention of ever opening the brewery in any of our minds. When we moved to this farm, we were going to be farmers and grow 10 acres of hops.
Yeah.
And we focused on that exclusively for 7 years before we started thinking about maybe we should diversify. Maybe we should be smarter because, hey, we started farming in our late 30s. So we're very hand farming, very laborious.
Yeah.
Like relies on volunteers. All your friends stop coming by year 3. They're like, sorry, busy, going away. It's like, oh, but it's harvest. We're all going to pick the hops for 18 hours under the blazing sun. No, I'm okay. I'm going, somewhere else. So the beer thing came completely as here's an idea as we were about to expand to that 10 acres. We're like, oh, did the math, like $500,000 worth of poles, cables, plants, equipment, an OST, a Wolf processor. It's like it all adds up very quickly. And I remember we were at your mother's house for Christmas, and I started noodling because I'd asked Charles McLean, who was like, I just want to give Charles McLean a big shout out. Because when I came back from Colorado and started growing hops, I was drinking craft beer in Ontario, and I thought it was great, and I was very happy with it all. But then Charles McLean came to one of our hop gatherings, like the first sort of hop industry gathering. There were like 18 people there. And Charles brought his pale ale that he used to make in his 1-barrel brew house. And I drank that beer, and it took me right back to Colorado immediately. I was like, oh, this is so inspiring, so different, so fresh, just so much flavor going on in this beer. I followed him around like a puppy dog for the rest of the day, asking him how he made that beer. And I'm like, well, how did you do this? And then he became a friend. And at some point I asked him, well, how much is a bottle cap? And how much is a bottle? And how much is the label, to try and understand the beer industry? And that's like 8 years ago, I guess. And so I started noodling, pen and paper at Gail's mom's house. like, well, if we're going to spend $500,000 on this hops, what if we diversify? We're worried about, again, climate change. We're worried about no insurance for hops. We're worried about these hops are hard to grow, and there's not a huge amount of uptake in the province for the locality of the hops. What would $500,000 in brewing equipment, sort of look like? And of course, the whole thing was like make believe at that point. But that's when any thought of making beer came into the picture, and we were about to spend $500,000 expanding our hop operation.
Yeah.
Interesting. What was it that finally convinced you to do to move in the direction of the brewery? Was it just more like the diversification, or like when you actually saw like the numbers on like, okay, if we dropped $500,000 on brewing equipment, a brew house and fermenters?
Yeah, the numbers for sure look so amazing.
Well, no, on the side of the numbers, no, what really spoke to me was the traceability. Like all of a sudden I was like, what? Oh, wait. So if we open a brewery, I can drink like what I'm growing, and I know exactly what I've put on the hops. I know that I'm not drinking chemicals. I know that I loved the control of that full process, and I was kind of sold from the traceability factor. I was like, oh yeah, we got to do that. And we had like a big old barn sitting there that was empty, and you were working offsite as a numbered employee at a great company, but and so it was going to get you home here full time, which has been okay. But really it was the traceability factor. I was like, oh, it's like, yeah, knowing that I could now officially drink and produce the stuff that I was growing, that we were growing.
Yeah, and I guess in some ways on top of that, like 8 years ago, you start looking at the industry, there's no level of saturation. You think, and here's this terroir-based beer, and we were seeing it. You mentioned it, Vermont being, one of the bastions of farm-to-table beer. New York State is also one of those, in part because the New York state government put a tax incentive in place to the breweries, saying, hey, if you buy, trying to stimulate farms, if you buy a certain percentage of ingredients from local New York State farm, you get to pay a lower tax rate on our state tax, which we've been advocating for in the province with the McKinnon brothers and other people for a long, and the Ontario Hop Growers Association. And so New York State has a lot of it too. And we saw that, and it wasn't really happening so much in Ontario at the time. And we thought, well, here's a trend that's coming, and it blends our passion for growing period, but growing hops particularly. And we love beer. I mean, admittedly, we love beer. So it's like, we're going to try to make amazing beer that we can drink and be really, really happy about and share with our community. So that sounded like a lot of fun. And probably any man or woman who's looked at the numbers for beer, it's like, of course, any entrepreneur, it's like, oh yeah. And then by year 7, $20 million, which obviously doesn't come to fruition. You see, the struggles that our industry has on the beer side and the hop farming side, because so many of our hop farmers, again, brothers and sisters, have decided to just forget it.
Yeah.
But the beer industry, there's a great campaign going on right now, obviously through the Ontario Craft Brewers Association. I guess that's what it's called. I'm not a member, but talking about the tax rates that are just like literally driving people out of business. How many breweries went out of business according to the Growler last year in Ontario? It was like 29 or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Expecting 39 this year, 49, 50. It's like, it's a difficult industry that requires a lot of community support and a lot of hustle ultimately. So we thought farming was hard. We're like, oh, it's so hard. We're so old. We're 40 years old. It's like, we'll start a beer company. Yeah, okay.
But it's lifestyle.
Yeah, no, totally.
It is
love
also fun.
No one's complaining. I love it. Get to do it with my best friend. Hey?
Love that. Hey, that's the best case scenario. My girlfriend and I have had a social media agency for 10 years. It's the best thing. And we just live and work and breathe the business. The only downsides, you have to make time for not talking about business and to kind of stop.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't end.
Our son, who's 14, has a rule at dinner: no talk about work. No work talk at dinner.
That's probably a good idea.
I think he's right. It's definitely good to do that.
Yeah, he implemented that a few years ago.
Smart kid for 14.
Yep.
I love that. How we feel about next beer?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh,
yeah, good.
Yeah.
What are we thinking, guys?
I thought we should drink Pilsner next, just as while our palates are clean.
The palate,
Clean palate.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Let's do the Pilsner.
Okay.
We'll split this one. Gail.
I think we should
We had
split
a
this
big
one.
lunch.
I love it. Okay, so this beer, I had this. I had both of these so far when I was there. This beer has got to be one of my favorite beer names ever.
Oh, Phil.
And you know what? I wouldn't have got it if we didn't meet like 10 minutes before I had it. So I wouldn't have even put two and two together. Maybe on Untapped, I would have probably read it. But still, I just think it's so, like, obviously, Philsner. So funny. It's very Modern Family coded.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Like,
That's
I could just see him doing something like that. I just saw a Modern Family clip like right before we started. So I think that's why it's in my head.
I have two funny stories about that name of that beer. Can I share them?
Please.
The first one is when we, as a team, we meet every Tuesday. We have meetings. We, talk about what's coming down the pipe. And we talked about this beer and how Brooks really wanted to make a traditional German Pils. And he kind of jokingly threw out a name, Philsner, and I was like, ha ha ha, funny. At the next meeting, all of a sudden, the labels were at print, and I was like, what is going on here? I thought that was a joke.
Up against the name, huh?
And I was a little, I was like, okay, well, maybe one day I'll have a beer named after me. But anyway, so that was the first thing. I was like, oh, that slid in there really fast. Okay.
Could I say I got India Pale Gail? No?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there we go. Yeah.
I feel like you deserve it.
That was too easy.
That was too easy.
It's fine. It's fine. I've gotten over it. And the second thing is that when we released this beer, we had people. Now, I think we might have released this just pre-COVID. Anyway, we had people calling us from across the province. Like,
my name's Phil.
No, you don't understand. I need to have that beer. My name is Phil. And I was like, okay, we're gonna get you that beer.
We'll get it out to you, buddy.
Phil.
Oh, it's great. I mean, honestly, we probably sent cases to Phil all over the place.
So shout out to this one to Mike Brooks. To all
the Phils out
are
there.
awesome too. But Mike
I'm gonna have to get a can for my dad.
Oh,
your
yeah.
My dad is a Phil.
It is.
He must be an awesome dude.
Oh, he's a great dude. Phil's a champion.
I
didn't even think about that.
This is Mike Brooks' recipe. Gail and I, at the most, they let us smash out or turn on the HLT. Mike Brooks, who I think is, I guess everybody feels that about their team, but Mike is an amazing brewer.
Yeah.
And his one stipulation to coming to work here, aside from being able to pursue his rock and roll career simultaneously, was that I do not make lagers that are in tank less than 10 weeks. So if you're okay with tying up tanks for 10 weeks, I'm going to make a traditional German Pilsner. It's going to be bready. It's going to be malty. It's going to have just the right amount of spicy, hoppy, flavor to it. And we need to go find noble hops from Ontario. If you're making me only use Ontario hops, well, go find me some really good noble hops in Ontario, which we did. And now we've purchased one, if not two, additional tanks, because there's usually 3 batches. We only have, our whole tank farm is like 6 tanks in total. 3 of them are filled with Philsner at all times because it's such a long gestation, obviously, as they're rotating into the production line or into the canning line. And so we said absolutely. And so this is 100% Mike Brooks's magic and artistry at work in terms of trying to present probably his favorite style of beer, I would say.
I love that.
Even though it used to be known for pale ales and East Coast IPAs, he's really gravitated to European style.
Yeah,
that's his vibes.
I love that.
Mike
Brooks. Thanks, Mike Brooks.
We love you, Mike.
Cheers, Mike. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, this is a banger. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
So German style Pilsner. Looking at Untapped, you got Hallertau hops from Heritage Hill, and you've got
from Backroads.
Okay.
Backroads down in London, who also run an amazing running club / beer garden / store in London.
Like tap room. Yeah.
They're a really awesome company, and they're farmers who grow great hops.
And this also has, like you said, it says 7 weeks lagered. Is that correct for this one?
So it's going to be eight minimum. I'd say 10 average.
Yeah, I was going to say
Gotcha.
longer than, yeah.
Okay. The Untapped probably was just older when you did it, and it's Patagonia Pilsner malt from Ontario Malting Group. So
yeah, it used to be. So that is not current because it's not, because we have not. Okay. We love Patagonia, both the country and the company, but they're the Ontario Malting Group. OMG, was that really what John's company was called? OMG, Ontario Malting Group. It's hilarious. Yeah. John Leenders, who's a farmer down the road, started a malting company as part of, like, he first came to us and said, I'm going to be the biggest hop farmer in Ontario. And I was like, dude, you do not want to be a hop farmer, but what the Ontario industry, the terroir chasing Ontario industry needs, like Barn Owl, which Barn Owl's done now, is we need malting. We need local malting, because that's the ingredient that we cannot get. That we want to complete this 100% terroir experiment. So he started, he's a big farmer. He started growing barley and getting other neighbor farms, and bought a malting setup, installed it, built a building, and he malted for 3 years, but he brought in Patagonia malt. So yeah, we were using his Patagonia Pilsner malt for a while there, but that's not what we're using now. I'd say that malt probably comes from BSG. I'm assuming it's German. It's it's definitely a Pilsner malt. I definitely know that, but definitely not from Patagonia. As much as we love Patagonia, can't wait to go there.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, that makes sense. Do you say Barn Owl malting is done?
No. Ontario Malting Group shut their doors. No, Barn Owl, they've got a line of people.
I think he was referring to OMG trying to do what Barn Owl had done.
Oh, okay. Okay. I saw that both Craig's and mine eyebrows just kind of jolted up for a second when we thought you said Barn Owl was done. I'm like, oh my god.
Right there. Quite the opposite. Barn Owl. I mean, I've tried to buy malt from Barn Owl, and they can't sell it to us because there's just so much demand. If they could just grow themselves tenfold, they're awesome. They're like holding the fort down on the malting side for everybody. It's awesome.
Good for them. That's crazy. All right. That's amazing. But this is like totally like this is one of my favorite beers I think that I had at the brewery. I really enjoyed this one. I feel like it's like nice and grassy, floral. It's got that perfect sort of Pilsner bitterness. Very crushable. What is it? 5.2 as well.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's just like the perfect beer to drink while you're farming hops.
And this must be something in your water profile, but this has a great minerality to it as well, which is going really well with kind of the just right amount of bitterness coming off of it. That I have to imagine that's the water profile doing that.
Absolutely. Nate, that is just like such a great catch on this. Water, we have super minerally water.
Yeah.
We do really minimal work on it. We soften it a little bit for sure, because obviously it's going to corrode all of your pipes and your heating system and all that stuff. But we don't really change it at all. That is the element, that's the base element of terroir ultimately, is a super minerally, and our non-alcs, they literally are full of minerals because of this groundwater that's that base ingredient. But when we first, again, neophytes, Gail and I have never made beer ourselves, right? They let us smash out, clean the floors. I was like, I'll jump in the tank and clean it. They're like, you'll die if you go in that tank. Okay, I'll clean the floor around it. Whatever I can do to be helpful. But the first guy we ever got to come and look at our water, because it's such an important part of the brewing process, looked at the results and said, you will never be able to make beer with this water. You need $100,000 water cleaning facility, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The amount of gear he quoted us that we needed, because you cannot make beer with this water. And I was super bummed about that until somebody in the industry. It might have been James. It might have been Zach. It might have been Zach. No, it was Zach. Zach Tremaine, who was our second brewer who worked here with us. He said that's the whole element of terroir. Phil, like lean into it. The styles of beer, the Pilsner, the soft water, the IPA, the hard water. Lean into it and find your terroir with this water being like Peter's about to die. With being, we moved the thing back. We didn't move the power. Oh. So the water is super minerally. Sorry guys, I'm just gonna plug my computer and lose contact here.
Is it okay?
Yeah, we moved the table. We didn't plug in the thing again.
You're good.
Is it on now? Are we better?
Yeah.
Sorry.
You don't want to get too cold.
Oh, you're good.
Guys,
you're good.
Please, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Okay, so then you ended up realizing that no, you can make beer with this water.
Stick with the water. Let's like lean into it and let's just make beer in style. So Nate's got obviously an amazing palate that he's picking up. And so
he does.
Cheers to that. But yeah, I really appreciate Mike Brooks' artistry on this and his commitment to this like long lagering process. And this is probably batch 15. I'm pretty sure when Brooks started this Pilsner program that he said it's going to take 20 to 25 batches to lock in the exact process for this, not accounting for seasonality in the groundwater, because the groundwater does change as the seasons change. Mm-hmm. So there's always going to be that factor involved in the beer making for us.
But we live in like quarry land, so we have lots of good minerals underneath us. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Lots of quarries around us. But we won't get into that.
I imagine that's probably not the funnest. So then why would, and excuse my extreme ignorance, but why does the seasons affect the water?
Because it's all groundwater, right? So as water is saturating through the soil, everything is going through the multiple layers of soil, clay, minerals, whatever else, that filtration process. Chemistry of the water, chemistry of the soil, when there's plant life, there's dead life, it changes. So that water chemistry changes ever so slightly as it hits the groundwater. And everything here is sort of this closed loop system. So all the brew water that we send out, it doesn't go to the city, doesn't go to Lake Ontario, it goes out into my back field. And then it trickles down through the ground, and then we wind up pumping it back up, or some variation of it back in that aquifer through the dedicated well for the brewery. So it's just like this constant cyclical process. And water chemistry changes through the year based on seasonality, basically. BAOS used to talk about this, actually. I think the first time I ever became aware of this was when Steve was making a presentation somewhere, and they were talking about the variability, because everybody, especially when you want to be a brewery the size of BAOS, it's like consistency. Every beer's got to taste exactly the same, no matter where you drink it, anywhere in the world, any time of day. And BAOS was accounting for the variability of their water source, which I don't know what that was, but that there was a seasonal variability to that. And they decided, instead of fighting it, to sort of embrace it a little bit.
Interesting. I think it's great. I think it's important to embrace it. And there's something like Nate, as soon as Nate said minerality, I'm like, oh, that's exactly what it is. And it makes it sort of like a more unique product. And like, there's something like, I don't know, you got to stand out in the marketplace by, with that. And you can either spend all this money and try and filter all the more unique things out of the water, or ride with it and just give people and they make fantastic beers if you make the right styles. I imagine like certain styles, it just sort of fits perfectly.
Well, definitely. I mean, it's definitely that's the driver. That was the driver, especially at the beginning. Again, was Zach Tremaine, who was our second brewer. He was the one who told us, like, obviously we're going to make a bunch of British beers, like United Kingdom beers, because that's the style of water they've got. So let's make that type of beer. We were kind of known as a European brewery, I think, in the beginning, some of them, and the beer was good, but Mike Brooks blew that program wide open in terms of all sorts of other styles that he brought to the fore. And I mean, nothing against like knocking water to zero and building a water profile. That's just as cool. It's like that's part of the brewing process, part of the science, because it's all molecular.
Basically, what tons of breweries have to do when they're dealing with city water, right?
Yeah.
Like they have to strip it.
Well, chloride, fluorine, chloride, chlorine, all the other elements.
They got to strip it and then add in all those other things. Yeah. But here, I feel like we naturally are already.
It's like old school brewing.
Yeah.
We brew on a 10 barrel system, so it's not like we have a large facility. You know, our LCBO SKUs, in all candor, like we brew them in Wellington because we don't have the volume here on such a small brewery. So Farmstead Ales, you know, brewed at Wellington under the control of us and the hops that we prepackaged for them and Mike Brooks, who used to work there. And we love those guys and the quality and the assurance that they provide to us. Yeah, the two fancy cans. But at 10, I mean, we could do it, but in a 10 barrel brewery, that's all we'd brew would be 2 beers, maybe, if not just 1 beer to satisfy that LCBO world, which, you know, is not that fun. So 10 barrels, like, you know, the water quality, like, why would we try to turn the water into something totally crazy and always build to be like, this is what we are. It's like, this is the land. Like, we've tried to grow corn. Corn doesn't grow here, but you know what we grow really well? Beets. You have never had a beet like a beet grown at GoodLot Farm and carrots. I mean, all root stuff, our soil, because of the minerality, you know, the soil loves it.
Density,
So let's just try to find the same thing with beer styles, particularly. And so, the Pilsner is always a top 3 seller here, both out of the bottle shop and pours, you know, on tap. Again, because of Mike Brooks. Can't say enough about that guy.
Yeah.
It's like having a great chef.
Well, I think the great thing about that is that, with water playing such a big impact, and with the fact that like this is the water from your farm, it really makes it so that the flavor of your beers, and like I feel like with this Pilsner in particular, like no other Pilsner is going to taste quite like this. It's like, you know, you couldn't really replicate this without without your water. Like this is like no one else is going to be able to make Pilsner.
The terroir. There you go.
Yeah. It's exactly why our brewer is so open in sharing his recipes, because he knows this.
Maybe it'll taste better. Who knows? But it'll never taste the same.
He's like an open book. He's like, oh, here's a recipe. It'll never taste like mine.
Interesting. So what other styles, from your experience, work really well with this high minerality water?
Interesting.
Dark beers.
I mean, dark beers,
I mean, and that does trend to European, British styles of beers, I would say. Our stouts, our porters, Highfalutin, which I would love to drink next. I'm just dying to drink that beer.
Love that beer.
I find the dark beers really do. Yeah, my glass is empty. You guys want to have another beer?
Yeah,
let's do it.
The two, so our profile is to do. We used to bottle everything and hand label, as Gail said, in 750s and in 500 ml bottles. Now we hand label everything. But all of our full-time, what we call our farm core beers, are. Do you have one of those? There's about 2 of those. Farm core beers are all in tall cans, but the one-off, the seasonal that we do once a year, are all in 355 mils. But the other thing about this, the two that, I mean, hopefully we'll get to both of them today, but the porter and the special bitter, they are, they're both wet hop beers. And so,
okay, you got my attention.
Okay, awesome. We are big wet hop.
Love that.
Oh, yeah. That
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, amazing. So this is the ESB.
And sorry, which 2 beers did you say are wet hop beers?
The Pippa Porter, the 2 short cans that I sent.
Okay.
The Pippa and the Highfalutin.
Okay, so this one is 2. Okay, that's awesome. I'm really excited now. Not that I wasn't before, but I'm extra excited now.
Yeah, I mean, and Nate, you might like it. For the first time this year, I guess we did it once last year, but the first time this year, both of our wet hop beers, wet hops for us are always kettle edition, always have been. So, 7 years of making wet hop beer since we started making wet hop beer. Always kettle. It's always sort of whirlpool, flame out. Let's throw them in and immerse them at the end. But Mike has moved it to the MLT this year, so it's in the mash, and it sits with the grain through that whole 60, 70 minutes, whatever he's mashing at. So it sort of comes in at a different time. So you don't get nearly as much of the grassiness that I find comes off wet hops in the kettle. Yeah. And it's way more subtle, honestly. I don't detect it nearly as much as I used to, because like blindfolded, you give me a wet hop beer, wet hops in the kettle, I'm going to taste the wet hops and I can identify that. Yeah. I don't get it hard on this one, but this is my favorite. I mean, this is on nitro in our shop right now, and I love this is my favorite.
Oh, amazing.
The community pick, put a bunch of people together, we all pick together, and
that's
time it with Mike Brooks and run it into the brewery to throw into the mash for him.
Yeah,
an ESB on nitro. That's not even fair.
Yeah, that sounds spectacular.
When are you coming south? Come on, Nate. Come on over.
Yeah, no, I got to get there.
We're gonna make that happen.
It is pretty.
Oh, I love this beer. It's copper, it's toffee, it's got the right amount of bitterness.
Cheers.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, the nose is insane.
Mm. Oh man, I love ESBs.
I do too.
I feel like they're like.
But on nitro, it's so soft and so smooth. On nitro, it's like
I can only imagine. Yeah. What made you put this particular one on nitro?
Well, again, Mike Brooks is the motivation for all this. We've put in a dedicated nitrogen generator to make our own beer gas, to run nitro lines, and to put nitrogen into beers. We tried dosing them on the canning line with limited success, and so we decided we'd just do it on tap. So we have 10 lines in our bottle shop tasting room here in the barn, and number 10 is a nitro line. So whatever we have. So it was down a little bit during the summer. We were going to do some nitro IPAs. We didn't actually get to that this year, but as soon as the dark beer program, so the porter, ESB, the stout that we're packaging tomorrow, it's just pretty much all the kegs that we produce, we put on nitro to serve the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's funny. It's become a thing. Like, I love Guinness. I mean, I think Guinness is maybe the greatest mass-produced beer on the planet. And I didn't really think all that much about the nitro element of it until we started making nitro beers and the softness of those little bubbles. And now we have it on tap. I find that most of our regular crew who comes here are all drinking whatever's on nitro. That's what they're drinking because they like the softness, the lack of filling, everything about it.
I was going to say it's also a little less gassy. Just easier.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
This is so good. This is fantastic.
Oh yeah. This is
wet about wet hops for a second?
Yes, please do.
Just internally, so the wet hop thing for hop farmers is huge, but when we first started hop farming, Nickelbrook was making a wet hop pale ale. Do you guys remember that beer?
I do, yes.
That was a banger.
Oh, it was so good.
It was in a 550 ml bottle, I think. And I would literally run around town, like tracking LCBO stores, and they'd be like, we have 22, and I'd take 20 and I'd leave 2. Like, I hoarded this Nickelbrook pale ale, and I loved drinking it for probably 4 months before I ran out. And it really turned me on to wet hop beers. Like, there was an element of that wet hop that seemed to really change the tone of that pale ale, particularly. And summer hits, summer misses the people who were doing it at the time. And then Nickelbrook in our 3rd year of hop farming, I think.
Oh no, it was
5th year of hop farming. 5th or 6th. They bought all of our Cascades wet. We harvested them and
it was huge.
Bought the whole harvest at $20 a pound.
Yeah, it was
at 4 times what we would normally sell them at, because you dry the hops out to this little light little flour so you can crush it into pellets.
Yeah.
But they bought them wet at the same price, and they made the farm's year that oh my gosh, we just sold all of our hops to one great client.
It was 2015.
And there's no processing, no packaging, no storage, just went out the door, and we became like evangelical about everybody should make wet hops. It's the salvation of the Ontario hop growers industry. It's that one big sale every year that people can do. And the beers are awesome. It's a great style that is only able to be done when a brewery and a hop farm are close. In Ontario, we have a bunch of that going on, so let's really push this. Scott Rondo from Drink Inc. Do you guys know Scott Rondo? You must have met Scott at some point. He's one of the founders of the Toronto Festival of Beer. And runs a company called Drink Inc. He did the first Wet Hop Beer Festival 7 years ago.
Probably 2000, 15 or 16.
And got a
always
bunch of
hosted it at the church, the Berkeley Church. On and yes. Anyway, what was funny about that festival is that it was growers and brewers that would come and showcase the beer that they collaborated on. And they would sell all these tickets and people would come, and a lot of people didn't really understand wet hop beer. Like, that was the hard part. It's like, by the time they got to the third table, they were like, if you're not into beer and you don't know what wet hop is, I found that pretty funny. Sorry, just to chime in there.
Well, I mean, terminology is a bit confusing.
Hardcores were like, oh, I love wet hop, but there were many people that were like, all these beers are very grassy.
People get confused with like basic terminology. Like, dry hopping is such a thing in the vernacular of what we talk about. Oh, there's so much dry hop, there's so much aroma. You introduce wet hop, like, oh, is that the hops you put in the kettle? I mean, that's sort of where the conversation starts. Frequently, oh, they're wet because you put them in the kettle. Those are the wet hops versus the dry hops that go in the fermentation. But we love wet hop beers. So thank God for Nickelbrook that year. We kept farming as a result of that. And I love that beer. And we were so proud. That was the first time we were sort of, aside from Mary Beth Keefe at Granite, who was our very first customer, the first person ever buy wet hops. No, we dried those hops. Those are full dried hops.
Shout out to Mary.
Yeah, obviously we love Mary.
And last week for the first time.
Oh my God.
The OCB. You guys definitely need to get involved in that. There's cool people around.
So when we had our first harvest in 2013, it would have been 12.
2012, yeah.
12. So this was back when the industry, we didn't have hop testing, we didn't have analytics, we didn't really have any processes as a grower group. We were still working through all this. And I literally remember bringing in my hop, not in garbage bags, but like literally compost bags, and being like, do you want to buy my hop? And she was like, I do, and let's do it. Let's do a collab brew together. And I was like, oh my God, I love you. That's a supporter. And then she used to come to the farm and harvest with us and hand pick with us. Anyway, but the industry has obviously evolved greatly in the last 15 years. But what I love most about the wet hop, as much as I love drinking the wet hop beer, I love the community aspect of it. As a grower who is out there in a pretty solo environment most of the summer, it's such a nice way to go collectively cut the vines down together, lay them out on the tables, and like have a social day together. And then like the fruits of your labor get weighed and you toss it all in together. It's sort of like the end of the season, like hurrah. It's just such a lovely, I just love it. I love the community aspect of wet hop.
So this year, because there hasn't been a wet hop beer festival for a bunch, since Scott Rondo did his, and then Blood Brothers did one this summer.
Yes, they did. That's right.
So 8 or 10 different breweries, and they all were picking hops with their customers and patrons and best friends, throwing them into the kettle or into the mash in our case, making this beer that they all made together. This community beer. And then Blood Brothers put on a great day to showcase all those beers and raise money for the Ontario Hop Growers Association. Which is rad.
That's so cool. I love that. I have long been a fan of wet hop beers. They've been one of my favorite fall styles for years. And I found it was such a funny thing that they seemed to disappear for a couple of years stretch. Maybe this was around, this was probably around 2020 to 2022 or something like that. Maybe a bit before that. But I found in the last couple of years, 2023 and 2024, they've come back with a vengeance, which I very much appreciated. And I have never heard any other brewers or brewery owners talk with this much enthusiasm about wet hop beers before, and I love it so much. This is so heartwarming to hear, and that's so refreshing to hear about that community aspect of it. That's really cool, and I'm glad that's such a thing that brings the community together for you.
Well, there was one year where I couldn't find volunteers, or we did it last minute. And if you remember, it was a Sunday in the beer garden. And I went up to the tables and I said, hey guys, if you're just sitting here chatting, I'll buy on the house pitchers, but I'm going to lay a bind down. And while you guys chat, did we lose?
He's just changing his battery.
I'm still here. I'm just changing my battery.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
While you guys are sitting here chatting, I'm just going to lay a bind down here, and you guys, here's some bowls, and you guys can just pick. And people loved it. They were like, what? I get to pick the hops? And of course, it starts that whole conversation of like, oh yeah, you are sitting beside the thing that you are drinking, which some people are like, what is, it unbelievably to me, they are here for an hour and they'll say, oh, you're the owner. Oh yeah. What is that that's growing there? And I'm like, that's hops. Those are hops, and you're drinking that right now.
Maybe we should label that. Maybe we should have big sign that says hops.
I know. Some people are like, what is that?
The 4 critical beer ingredients and help people get.
Anyway,
you are drinking this.
Ecstatic. Yeah.
That's a cool way to do it.
That had never happened while I was at a brewery. I would lose my shit. That would absolutely make my day.
Right? Yeah.
So you get free beer and you get to play with the hops and just pick them, and then still shoot the shit with your friends. You don't even have to sit up, stand up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't leave. I don't think you'd be able to make me leave at that.
I'd be like, how many rounds? Keep it coming. That's actually really smart. It's probably significantly more affordable from your side to do that. Than,
I was like, there's the pictures. And then I just went around and collected all the volumes. But you know what, the best part about being a farm is that you get to do fun things like, comedy night on a Wednesday night, and it's in the midst of sort of harvest season, and you just throw down little, bundles of hops, and you just see people picking them up and smelling them, and their hands are getting sticky. All those things make it so fun, right? Because you can do it. Most people are like,
every brewery in Ontario should make a wet hop beer to join in on this type of fun in terms of the community building. If people are really into your beer or just into you being in their neighborhood, whether they love the beer or not, but they're coming to your place, to have the opportunity to get your hands on one of the critical ingredients. Let's face it, the sexiest, coolest ingredient of beer. I mean, yeast is pretty cool too, actually, single cell organism, but hops are kind of like the showcase of beer. There's the aroma and the stickiness and the lupulin and all this great stuff. Everybody could do that at every brewery, and then every hop farmer in Ontario would benefit dramatically from that uptake. Ontario could be a world leader in wet hop beers. That could be a thing. We're all looking for beer styles that are geographic, so why not wet hop beers for us?
Preach!
As a hop farmer, that there are many hop farmers out there that are really good hop farmers, but what they're not good at, or not, the balance isn't there, is sales. And if you aren't selling your product, then you're sitting on inventory, and it saddens me that there are, and those are not always the ones that close, but it's a tough thing. And I have found that Ontario brewers, for the amount, 300 and, I don't know what the count is of breweries these days, 375? I don't know what it is.
It sounds right.
Yeah, about that. And the 35 growers, you'd think that they would all be sold out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's just like, what?
As
You're
Ontario
sitting on inventory? Are you kidding me? I wish I could buy it all from you, but I can't.
The Ontario craft beer industry probably consumes 80 to 120 times the hops that are grown in Ontario. So it's kind of a drop in the bucket to just base load 10% of my kettle hops. Oh, who cares what the analytics are? They're going to blow up in the kettle anyway. I'm just trying to get some basic ingredients out of this. Why that? But I guess you could say the same thing about any locavore movement and the farm to table and the food and the farmers trying to grow for restaurants and for markets. It's a mindset that we're trying to push pretty hard to get people to make that connection with like local, resilient relationships as opposed to the globalized sort of trade industry is good for everybody. It's a lot better for your neighborhood. It's a lot better for your neighbors. It's a lot better for your community. And yeah, it may cost incrementally just a little bit more, but especially when you're talking hops, like in your bill of ingredients for a beer, your hops cost is, pretty minuscule compared to everything else that's going into that beer. So making that commitment is not really a financial challenge for anybody. And if people could get out into hop yards and see how hard the hop farmers are working out there, trying to grow this amazing, spice of beer in some ways, I think they would make a commitment to those local farmers. But there's fewer and fewer of them every year because, again, the support has not been there, so people bail.
Well, and also to their point earlier, like we can't grow some of these proprietary hops.
Yeah, I mean,
so that there's not as much flexibility.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Citra is beautiful. I love that hop. I love all those hops.
I do
really
like
do.
Drinking other people's Citra.
Yeah. It's like Mosaic and Citra, give it to me.
Like, let's go.
I like to pop down to Badlands.
Go down to Badlands, absolutely.
Around the corner.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's perfect. Sun and Hills close by too. You guys are in a pretty cool.
Oh my God, we're in like beer country right now between Badlands, Stone and Hill, and Caledon Hills.
And Mono.
And Mono, which is just outside that immediate area. So there's 5 breweries all within. We're all 20 minutes from each other. I mean, there's an easy 20-minute loop of 5 breweries, and you could knock off a couple of amazing cideries like Heartwood and others, and a couple of wineries, Spirit Tree. And a couple of wineries. Is like we're the new Prince Edward County up here. It's
yeah.
Don't tell Peck I said that, but it's like part of what's driving a lot of this. There's an amazing culinary scene here now too, and north of us, to Markdale and Beaver Valley, because it's so accessible to the GTA. There's so many people so close by. And, Niagara's pretty far and Prince Edward County's pretty far. You're talking about the windshield time, but you can just like pop up the 410 and boom, you're in the Greenbelt, you're in the escarpment, and there's breweries and everything just waiting for you to come and chill out.
And what I would find kind of fascinating about that is that the 4 other breweries that are close to us, I do find that we're all very individually quite different.
Yeah.
Styles
you are for
and
sure.
Personality and just the culture. Like it's so interesting because you're like, originally I remember being kind of like, oh, there's other breweries opening and like, should I feel threatened? Or like, is this competitive? And I've actually felt the exact opposite. It's like co-opetition. It's like, oh my God, you are going to bring more people up and I'm going to bring more people up, and collectively we're all going to like, and my IPA is going to taste different than your IPA, but like we've also all have our own different sort of styles.
Yeah, styles of approach. Yeah. I mean, absolutely.
So
we all have birds as our brand stand for some.
We do all have birds.
Yeah.
Oh, you do? That's right.
Yeah,
like owl, woodpecker. What's Sonnen Hill? Does Sonnen have a bird? Am I
Sonnen Hill, not really, but isn't there more? Isn't there's more like the sunrise? It's the sunrise.
Sunrise.
Yeah. So 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4. We all have birds, and like sort of Belgian, IPA, German, and we're all over the place. I guess in some ways, it's more like Euro, North American. I guess. Yeah. Anyway, I mean it's a great time to be a beer drinker in Ontario, hands down.
Oh yeah.
Every new brewery, especially that huge influx of breweries that came over the past 10 years. You think the beer like ours probably wasn't like top tier out of the gate, obviously. Like getting to know my water, getting to know my system, getting to know my suppliers, getting better at my trade. I mean, the beer in Ontario across the board is better than it's ever been. We're all super privileged to be able to be a part of that. And especially here in Caledon, where we have all these great mates who are all making amazing beer and all supporting each other. I mean, it is very fun, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah.
In fact, we love Sonnen Hill, we love Badlands, we love Caledon Hills, we love them, their families, their kids, like fun. Their patrons, and it's just a great time to tour.
I keep saying this, and we haven't done it, but I keep saying that we should reach out to all the owners and be like, every, once a year or every 6 months. We should all get together collectively as owners and just like, okay, what do we need to change in or what tourism thing can we like tap into? I don't know.
So I want to do.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Right?
Absolutely do that.
To get together with them and be like, okay, what are your hardships? And like, what are your, like, just try to figure and scratch each other's backs in terms of like, how do we help each other grow?
Do you know what that reminds me of? There's two things I've seen like that. The main one though, there's the East End, there's like Toronto East End breweries where like, I think Eastbound kind of drove that. So it's like, Godspeed and Eastbound and Left Field and Radical Road and Rorschach and Black Lab and all them, they have a little thing together. But one that we worked with recently with our nonprofit is the Guelph guys. It's 6 breweries in Guelph. They have like a website, guelph.beer, and they even have a deal with the city. And I'm saying this because of what you just said, Gail, about the you probably see where I'm going, the beer bus. That runs one Saturday a month. And that beer bus, they were saying, because we ran a beer bus event, and they were like that their free beer bus has been so incredibly successful. Like I think they run it 9 months a year. That is because they can't, as soon as it gets too cold for a patio, for as far as overflow of people, it's too hard. But it's so successful. And it's like, it's super, it could be really cool. Cause even when we came to see you guys, we went right to Sonic Hill afterwards. We got there like, I don't know, 15 minutes before close. And that was so nice. I know Callum briefly, but like he wasn't there, but the staff was so lovely. And so like, take your time. If you want something else, like we're good. Like, oh shit. All right. Like that's super kind, but it was super close. And I know I've been to Badlands a bunch, so I know where that is in relation. I'm like, and I did realize that the Caledon Hills, what was the fifth one?
Mono Brewing.
How do you spell that?
So they're just a little bit north of Caledon, like north of Stonen Hill in Mono Center.
M-O-N-O.
Just north of Orangeville. M-O-N-O. Mono.
I had no these guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Got a beautiful facility, great space, great beer. Yeah, he's doing a lot of beers. He's like knocking out a lot of different beers.
Yeah.
He's got just like, it's a beautiful property to hang out at. He's super, like last time we were there, his mother was
an IPA. No, he has a pale ale that every time I find it at a restaurant, I'm like, oh, I gotta order that. It's delicious.
He does a smash too. One thing I really like about that place is that he does a smash that he just changes the hops. So basically the same. It's just like, here's the iteration of a different hop into this. I love that. It's an appreciation of that ingredient.
Yeah. And then also, let's not forget Hockley's.
Oh my God, Hockley! You're right.
Hockley's our neighbor, but Hockley doesn't really have much of a Hockley Valley Brewing. Yeah,
I know them.
They've been around forever.
I thought they were British. They're from Hockley Valley.
They're literally in Orangeville. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're probably the closest one to us, actually. They're in an industrial park in Orangeville. They have been around much longer than anybody. But they don't have much of a, like, you can't go and enjoy a beer in their space. Like, it's like,
it's not really a tasting room. There's no forward facing. They're 100% LCBO beer. So.
Yeah.
But
their dark is
their dark is.
Do I do this?
What's that?
No, this?
It's like number one.
Oh yeah. This is the code for. Would it be possible to have a bathroom?
The code.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I forget it. We're gonna pause for a moment. We'll be right on back, guys. And we're good. Alrighty.
And we're back.
So, I guess it was like a pretty good segue to the next one. I think we're all pretty much wrapping up this bad boy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to introduce the next round.
Yes, please.
Please do.
So we are gonna focus on these. I call these girls the sisters. So this one is Yonder, which is like farther away, West Coast. And this is funny. I know. I thought Phil was learning this for the first time tonight, but he's not. And then Stone's Throw, which is our East Coast leaning.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So it's a little closer, Stone's Throw, over yonder. But we are going to start with Yonder. West.
Okay.
Or continue with a West.
You'll know what I mean. The differentiation too, you can see in the topographic lines on the cans. Ooh. They're a little steeper on the West Coast, a little steeper mountains, versus the East Coast, which is a little bit more rambling territory. Again, Laura Wills, the details, like the topographic lines on these two beers, East Coast, West Coast, line up.
Yeah.
So yeah, Cali Ale yeast. These are both 5.8%. We don't make a lot of IPAs.
No?
I have my own.
Okay.
I love this beer. It's like my number one full-time beer. But Cali Ale yeast, it's like, back to the Colorado thing. It's like West Coast. That was the IPA of choice in Colorado 20 years ago. And so I really developed a huge love for West Coast IPAs, and they were really kind of falling out of favor, I would say. There weren't a lot of people doing Westies until 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think lots of people are getting back into this orange tinged, piney, resinous, hoppy, style driven by the Cali Ale yeast. I always say it's like the dawn of craft beer was Cali Ale yeast and IPAs. And so we don't do a lot of IPAs, but we do this East Coast and this West Coast version of these two beers. And yeah, this beer. Cheers, guys.
Absolutely here for it. Folks, Nate, are you good? There we go.
I'm good. Cheers.
Y'all. Get that in you. Great nose.
It's a pretty beer.
We knew another beer with Cali Ale yeast, our Big Head, which is a West Coast red, even a little more dank than this one. Similar tones. I'd say to some degree a lot darker, obviously darker malts. But yeah, that's the Westie.
Was that named with the Big Head Hop Yard in mind?
Yes. Again, geez, Nate, you are on this stuff. 100%, because we love Nicholas Shout, who ran that farm so much. He was the largest organic hop farmer in Canada. We're maybe the smallest organic hop farmer in Canada at the time. And so we were trying to source everything we could from him to try and make our product as organic as possible. Malts are very difficult to come by organically. And so we named a beer after him. So it was featuring 100% Big Head hops with a smattering of dry hopping from GoodLot in that beer. And so that's how it got its name. Absolutely named after the Big Head River, I guess, ultimately.
But Nicholas had such a big personality, and you either really loved him or you didn't like him. And I remember coming away from a
He's going to watch this, right? So.
Yeah, he might. No, he's in photography now. But I remember coming out of a OGA meeting with him, and then him telling me his farm name, and I was like, Big Head. Of course he's calling his farm Big Head. And then I realized, of course, his farm was on the Big Head River.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's geographical. Oh, okay.
Big Head.
I have a love of one of my favorite people, so I'm able to say all that.
Anyway, yeah.
So
we
this
were really
go on, sorry, brother.
Sorry. Inventory. He was a big supplier to BAOS. That was his number one customer because organic hops, BAOS was organic at the time. And that's also part of what drove him out of the industry. And so when he left, we bought his entire inventory, and we're kind of done with those hops in the kettle, particularly, probably up to 3 years, we were throwing some of those hops into the kettle. But no longer. There's no more Big Head hops in the Big Head Amber or Big Head West Coast Red.
Yes, I had that at that day. That was a fantastic beer. Yeah, that was a banger, and it was super different. That it was like a red. I'm just looking at the pictures of it now. Like it's definitely like a much deeper amber than this is kind of more the classic West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's fantastic. By the way, this one has Centennial and Chinook, and it's 5.8.
It's definitely going to be the big 3 C's, Centennial, Chinook, Cascade at any time, which is what drove, that early North American craft beer scene, and where, Citra and Mosaic and all those are kind of coming from. Ultimately, the breeding programs off the Cascade, Centennial, Chinook, to try and accentuate those attributes that people loved out of those 3 hops, North Americanized version of originally European hops, obviously. And I don't know. I consume cannabis as well, so it's like I love those tones. I love the dankness of West Coast beers.
Yeah.
And again, they're very prominent in Colorado when I was sort of developing my palate for craft beer there. And so I pull this beer more than any other beer because it's around all year. So I'd say legitimately I drink more of this than I do anything else on an annual basis.
Probably true.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I'm like as Craig has already alluded to, like we're big fans of West Coast IPAs, and I'm in particular a big fan of classic C hop West Coast IPAs, and this is really hitting on that.
Yeah.
Having
like
the
throwback.
flight, it's a total throwback, and having the experience at the brewery of having the flight was so fire, because it was, when's the last time I had like 3 West Coast IPAs? So from the Farmstead Ale, Yonder, and I had the Big Head Amber in the one flight. When's the last time I had 3 totally different West Coast IPAs back to back from one brewery? Like it's very
and in an Ontario
rare.
brewery at that.
Yeah, the only other place that does one is Saint-Quentin Baron in Quebec, who are good friends of ours, and they do impeccable West Coast, and they do a whole bunch. Never had. Oh, you guys would love that.
I never thought of it. I thought of like that lineup as like. I mean, I guess partly because I always think of the pale ale or the Farmstead Ale as being a pale ale, but West Coast leaning. But no, it's interesting. I've never thought about those 3 in a flight. Fun.
And it was such a nice experience. Yeah. Like if you think about, if you go to any sort of brewery, most things in New England leaning these days. So finding a good Westie isn't even super common. And that's something that I'm always searching for. And Nate and I are both like very passionate about. If there's any Westies that we find that are fire, we're like, hey, like, let me grab this. Do you want this? Yeah. Like, we're always making sure to hook it up because it's very uncommon. So to go to a place and have that, I was like, oh, this is like, I'm drinking it on this beautiful day, like Sunday afternoon, surrounded by hop vines. Like, it kind of couldn't get much better than the food. I kind of almost feel like that's a great segue to talking about the experience at the brewery. And I imagine obviously it's different in winter and summer. The summer experience, just to speak to, I went once again, I think it was August. So it was a little, maybe it was September, because it was a little cold. I wore a hoodie, and I remember being like, I have to wear a hoodie today.
Yeah.
So I think it was in one of those freaky kind of like, but one of these beautiful, like blue sky, but a little bit chilly days, maybe like 15 degrees type of thing. And just to paint the picture, when you drive in, there's on the left, you've got where you guys are right now, the retail store. And then as you keep going, there's this beautiful outdoor, like 2 different outdoor sections. And you guys can please correct me if I'm missing anything, because I think there's a whole bunch of stuff we didn't see. But like 2 different outdoor seating sections separated by hop vines, which is even cooler, and a bar in each place, which was just a vibe. And it was rammed, and there was a dude playing like guitar and doing some like kind of country vibes. So it was just super chill for a Sunday, and it was not too loud, but it was there cool in the background, but not too loud that you couldn't still talk, because that's always annoying. And it was good. We bring our dog everywhere, so we didn't have to worry about that. And everyone's like, oh, the dog. And everyone's nice. The servers, everyone was lovely. And then on the other side of the hop vine was the second patio, if you want to call it that, or seating area with the food. And we came, I mentioned earlier, my girlfriend Tiffany found you guys from Soulyve, which is he's a Jamaican chef. His name is Phil? Is his name Phil or
Phil DeWar. Another
Phil. That's what I thought. So many Phils. It's just it's a Phil extravaganza, and
Nate, you definitely got to bring your dad there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
He's gonna lose his mind. Does he drink beer?
Not really, but if he's curious what I'm up to, he will. And if I bring him somewhere, he'll have one. So he'll have to have a Philsner for sure.
Zero question. And the food experience was so great. I guess Phil is a Jamaican chef, but it's not just Jamaican food. I don't recall exactly what we had. I know there was some jerk chicken, maybe even some was fish tacos. Am I misremembering that?
Yeah, fish tacos, Trini doubles.
That's what we had. Those 3.
Yeah,
out of control, dude. It was so good.
Veg bowl.
Yeah,
and some veggie fritters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He Soulyve we've been so fortunate to have partnered with him. So Soulyve has his own following, his own culture, basically, and had a restaurant he started at the farmers market in Orangeville, like 15 years ago.
Selling Jamaican patties.
Selling patties, these power patties, and then opened a Carib fusion restaurant in Orangeville, which was amazing. So busy, but he had a small or young family and was just like needed to reshape his life, and then we partnered, and it was just like, what a partnership it's been. And outside of his food, like, he's just a beautiful soul. Like, he's just so community minded, and like, food is like a language of love for him. Like, he's just a rad. He's so rad.
He's a big leader locally. Like, Phil's a cultural phenomenon. He, born and raised in Jamaica, moved to I guess he was in Brantford for a bit, but then he moved to Orangeville at a young age, went to high school. He was like the only Caribbean kid in school. Orangeville's changed dramatically since he was in high school. And then he opens this, Caribbean restaurant in almost the whitest town in Ontario in some ways at the time. Like, Orangeville, it's like named after the Orangemen, like what's it going to be?
Yeah.
And started this Caribbean festival. The full deal. Shut down Mill Street, and dancers, music. He just brought a whole new vibe to Orangeville, and I would say extending beyond Orangeville, that has just been welcoming and just changed the dynamic of our community. So we are massive fans of Phil DeWar, and he was a guest chef. We opened our first beer garden, as you were sort of describing, Craig. It's like, we do have two beer gardens, the original hop bin garden where we have the live music, and 110 people can kind of sit there. And then during COVID, because you had to have 4 people at a table and you had to be 6 feet apart from everybody else, so we turned our old compost heap into a second garden, which is the Good Spot garden, and then we put a food truck down there that we purchased from another chef and renovated, and so we could have people spaced out. And Phil was a guest chef in 2019. He'd come once in a while. We loved his restaurant. He was one of our first customers. He was just so gracious when I was like, we're going to make beer. I'm just this guy making beer in my hop farm. He's like, I love it. I'm going to put your beer on. He was always a great partner in his restaurant. And he guest chefed every once in a while. And we knew we didn't love juggling. I had to schedule a different food truck every day, of the summer. It was quite onerous.
Yeah,
I'd say.
we had a sort of a mandate where we would like shuffle different food every day, which was a lot. People loved it.
Yeah.
They were like, who's coming? What's on?
Super fun,
but
so much work and different chef, different requirements every day.
Different menus.
So we changed the parameters. Like, we need to have like one anchor. We'll still bring in guest chefs, but one anchor chef. And we never even thought about asking Phil DeWar. Like, he's way too big for our place. Like, he's like such a massive hero to us.
Yeah.
And one day he came over. It was like post, like, we're in the middle of COVID, I guess, or sort of like halfway through the pandemic. And I have a picture of him at the fence at our house, kind of pensively, like, I think I want to take this on full time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? For real? Like, Phil DeWar at GoodLot? And so he has brought his whole vibe. He kind of owns that Good Spot patio.
Yeah.
We have live music going on up top, which is, normally sort of bluegrass adjacent, I would say. And it's a Carib Fest going on down in the food garden.
Yeah.
He anchors. We do a Caribbean festival every long weekend. Sunday and Monday is dedicated to reggae vibes across the board.
Well, reggae artists, yeah.
Yeah, reggae artists, but like the menu becomes very Jamaican. That weekend it's like jerk chicken and fritters and coconuts.
And then when he puts a post out, like, he doesn't do certain menu items until the long weekend, and then when he puts that post out, that's when Phil and I have to stand at the gate.
Yeah. Turn people away.
Because he has such a following, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But they are cool. Like,
he's awesome, and his food is amazing, and he switches the menu up as the summer goes on. So, like, to your point, in the winter, like mid-October, to mid-May, we're in this beautiful barn, which only accommodates about 50 to 55 people.
Yeah.
And Phil makes charcuterie tiffins, so these towers, these
stackable nibbles.
Oh yeah, no tiffins.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
stackables and tiffins, a 4-tier tiffin. So that's sort of like the basis of our food, because we don't have any kitchen facilities in this barn.
Yeah.
And we have guests come in. Phil will be one of those. He'll come and do a jerk thing. One day we have oysters on Sunday. We have tacos starting in January every Friday. So we have guests kind of rotating through, but mostly it's more nibbles through the winter. But in the summer, it's like full restaurant experience. When we open at noon, on Saturday and Sunday, we'll probably have 100 people here, potentially right at noon, who just like, this is where they're going for lunch to have a beer, but they're coming for the food. The Good Spot patio is completely full. Yeah. There's nobody where the live music's going to be in 3 hours. It's empty. There's just our beer ambassadors standing there looking around like, well, nothing to do. I'll just, clean tables. And then as the day transitions and the music starts and people kind of gravitate to both patios, and then at full capacity, we'd be at about 240 people, depending on how many cars come in. If hopefully people are carpooling because the climate's on fire. And they wander around the paths, and there's a disc golf course and these 2 patios, and wander through the hops and play with the chickens. And
there's games for kids.
Games.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Sometimes I have to remind myself. Actually, what's really fun is when someone's like, "Oh, are you here?" And it's a random Saturday, and I'm like, "Oh, I am here. Oh, I'm going to come out and see you." And then I actually sit in for 2 hours and have a beer and chill, and it's like, oh, it's pretty fun here.
Design a place to hang out. Pretty close to what I designed.
Some people ask, they're like, how did you guys figure this out? And I'm like, well, I think it kind of was just like, how would you want your backyard if you were going to hang out with your friends? Like if you were going to be able to, hang like our crew, like how would you want it to be? And it just kind of evolved like that. I think
sorry. That's probably not a great thing. Love vibe, just love across the board. That's kind of what we're, and again, like to Phil DeWar, like he's a big part of that. He's a big anchor and all that as well. Yeah. He teaches us a lot about all sorts of things, and provides amazing food. So we stop cooking 4 days of the week in the summer. We literally, our culinary delight is that we have this unbelievable chef on our farm 4 days of the week, and we eat there every day. And our son works on the food truck now. He's being mentored by Phil DeWar, so it's like this thing going on.
That's pretty big. That's pretty great for your kid to be able to learn to work. I worked in my family's business too, as like they got it when I was 8, and I feel like it sort of taught you the just work ethic, and then now being able to like learn the specifics of all of the food service from like a guy who is super well known, renowned, and impeccable at his craft. I think that's pretty sick for a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Our son has always been really food oriented. He likes to cook, so he didn't really. Well, he would have maybe liked to work the patio, but he can. He's 14, so we're like, where do you want to work? And he was like, actually, do you think Phil DeWar? And I was like, well, you got to send your resume in and do the whole hiring process. But anyway, he really enjoyed the summer. Yeah, it was great.
Side note about Phil DeWar, he just, with Chef Jax, who works in his kitchen as well, who's also a very well-known chef, they just catered the Marley Brothers, both of their tours that came through Toronto over the summer. They were the caterers.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Which I have been hired for the next one. I'm definitely mentioning that.
And I also want to say that Phil DeWar, this is sort of where his mindset is. So he got hired by the town to redo like their arena menus. Like
all their sports complexes.
All their sports complexes. So you know how like that concession food is like,
hot dogs, popcorn.
Yeah.
Chips.
So he came in and did a program where he revamped the menu, but also like revamped their hiring and welcomed all all different people and train
Training
different.
process,
Yeah, it was
everything.
really inspiring. It was really impressive.
Okay. He's a phenomenon in this neighborhood. He's a cultural leader and just a human leader across the board.
And I like his food.
I love that.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. Like, I didn't realize that was the story behind it all. And look, just to even sort of like further, since we're all like, you know, loving on Phil right now, he's how, like, so Nate had already had GoodLot from his beer box. I discovered GoodLot because of Evan at Wheeled Brew, who love you guys and included the wit in the podcast last year. He's such a champion and a great dude for beer. We need to have him on again.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then my girlfriend, completely separately, once again, her idea even to start BAOS 10 years ago, found you guys because of Phil, because she's sort of not as much in the beer world, but she's follows any sort of local Jamaican chefs and things like that. That's, you know, and she mentioned you to me half a dozen times. And then we're like, yeah, we need to take her mum there. We always like, whenever we find cool stuff, we want to take her mum, because all these Toronto people always front on Hamilton. So we always want to show the Toronto people, as people who lived in Toronto like yourselves, like, hey, Hamilton and all the things that we take you are pretty sick, hey? Like, it's kind of better than Toronto. We take him to GoodLot, to Willowball, to Badlands, and to all of these places that are like, hey, these are really fun. And these you know, isn't it beautiful to come out here and you're like, wow, I get to sit in these beautiful, like, farmland and in this, like kind of you said, Gail, like, you know, you're in your own space and not even realizing how amazing it is. Like, damn, this is a vibe. That's how we felt. So it's like, I think and by partnering with someone like that, then the other thing that, because we have our nonprofit called Link Up, which is about trying to get more people involved in beer, right? And because, you know, if it's the joke, white dudes with beards, it's not going to go anywhere. We need, because beer is for everybody. We just need everybody involved. It's both a social thing, because it's just weird if everything, it looks monoculture, but it's also a bottom line, like literally an economic thing that it's sort of, everyone needs to get involved, and more people can work in the industry and bring different thoughts and ideas. So the fact that I felt like I wonder if it was because of Phil, because I know at Badlands they're very diverse, and Troy said to me it's because he thinks or his guess is the proximity to Brampton, and a whole bunch of different people live in Brampton. So every time we go to Badlands, all sorts of different folks there, and I felt like it was the same at GoodLot, and I just think that's like the optimal situation. If I can go there and see, it feels like I could be in a tap room in Toronto. I just happen to be on a farm.
Totally.
And I love that.
Yeah,
that's really developed over time. I mean, maybe it's because I've had too much beer now, but that really developed over time. Where, I mean, you know, very Orangeville-like. This was not a diverse farm when we first opened in 2019.
No.
Phil added a huge amount of that because he brought so many new people to come and check it out. They're like, oh, I like the vibe here. I want to hang here and have this great food, and the beer's okay. And it's just evolved from there. Where now, it's like you could be anywhere in Brampton or anywhere in Toronto, and it's going to have the exact same look, same vibe. It's like, the whole world's here. We're all together. This is what this little planet's about. And it's one of the most important things that's evolving, I think, on this farm, particularly as the whole region sort of transitions and grows and becomes more interesting. So it's been a big part of what's going on here. And there's a lot of people to credit Link Up, you know, being obviously awesome in terms of trying to highlight this and scholarships, and Ren and the work that she's been doing. It's like so much work, and Aaron, you know, blowing the doors open on the behavior in this industry. And that's all been just like so important. And we're just riding along, like, you tell us what to do. How do we support what you're doing? You know, our focus has been very environmental from the outset, in terms of like, we need to do this if we're going to start a business. And that has come along with it now. It's like, yes, there's so much more that we need to do as a community to just make this way cooler than it ever has been before, honestly, and just more
well, not about cooler, but more intentional.
Well, cooler in terms of like, who do you want to hang out with? Where do you want to be? I want to be where there are people who are just a community together at all times, and we all have each other's back. And I mean, the beer industry, you know, has not been the coolest space to be in. And depending where you're farming, I think that's probably not dissimilar in some ways. And the evolution of what we're seeing in front of us, both on the small scale farming and the small scale brewing side, and how that's all mashing forward, just very inspiring, I think, ultimately to want to be like, let's keep doing this. Let's keep trying to promote this. Let's keep pushing this. Let's keep supporting. Like, I just think it makes it interesting to continue to be in the beer industry and not pivot towards like, let's just grow food now. Let's make sure we feed people.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it makes it interesting. Yeah. Makes it better.
I used to be a film producer in my past life, and I've worked on many beer commercials, and I will tell you, beer has come a long way.
I could see that.
Beer has come a long way. And,
totally.
Yeah, which is really wonderful and really amazing. Like, it's all good.
Check out the lacings on that West Coast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oof.
Definitely.
Oh, I'm enjoying the hell out of this. This was
this is really good.
Yeah, this was another favorite from the day as well. Like, this was just such a banger. So nice. Right. And it's I really enjoy seeing how I feel like people don't understand the value of West Coast. Kind of, you guys alluded to it before, or Phil, I think you mentioned it. Just like everyone's about haze. I love haze. Haze is everything.
Yeah,
but I feel like we all got into beer. You guys were like 10, 15 years before Nate and I were into beer. So you guys are like so much further ahead. But that means you were drinking this style of beer all of that time, like a decade plus.
Oh, yeah.
But, and then
East
haze
Coast
came around.
Really a thing.
Yeah, it wasn't until 20. Like, I think if I've look, depends who you ask. I was with Sean Hill from Hill Farmstead. He said, I think he did his first. It was 2010 or 2011, and he was arguably the first one. And then it kind of went from there with the Vermont IPAs with like Hetty Topper and stuff like that. That was actually technically before, but it wasn't real hay. Like, it's a Vermont IPA.
It's a different kind of thing,
different kind of thing. And then you got like Treehouse and Trillium and da. But it didn't even really hit any of our radars. At least I can speak for probably us here, like 2015, 2016, when you're like, oh, what's going on here? What's this all about?
Yeah,
and
totally.
We weren't really doing it. So like, then all of a sudden this, you're like, I'm over it. All I want is this juicy milk stuff, and it's fire. But then there's something about this that, like, I don't know about you, Nate, when we started to get back on excited about the style, but it must have been the last 2 to 3 years, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Like, not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. And I would say right now, and like, tell me if you disagree, I would say right now, about 50% of the haze that I drink kind of bores me. I'm just kind of like, like it's not bad, but like, I'm not excited about this. Whereas I would say when I have a West Coast, 80% of the time I'm like, yeah, this is a banger. Like, I think that's the difference in hit rate on hazies versus Westies a lot of now.
That's a really fair call, particularly because the way that haze is made is like it's a lot of new ones. It's not a lot of repeated SKUs, so there's not a lot of that trial and sort of like dialing in of the product. It's more like throwing shit at the wall. Hopefully, this is a banger. Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't, and that's fine. That's beer, right? That's craft beer. Totally fine with that. And it's just the volume. I think the sheer volume of craft of haze is sort of starting to become a bit, not necessarily tiresome, but like I want something else that's going to be more of a guaranteed.
I don't think tiresome is an exaggeration. I don't think that's inappropriate.
Yeah. I'm glad they said this.
I know. I know. Thank you. I'm like,
look,
I agree.
We still love it.
Agree.
You guys are on the point. I'm not surprised based on that. And look, once again, I fucking love haze, and I drink it every drinking session.
Like we're Badlands evangelists over here.
Yeah, totally. Like it's absolutely 100%.
It's a vibe. There's something though about even, and this is coming almost like when I go to the States, I'll go and get Two Hearted, like a 6-pack or a 12-pack of Two Hearted.
Yeah,
because I'd rather keep that, or I'll get like Sip of Sunshine or something like that, or Maine Beer Co, or something that I can keep in the fridge that I don't have to think about. I've had it before. I've already done the reviews, and I can just have this Westie, and I can just break the haze up with this beautiful Westie, because there's really not that many coming local. I mean, obviously now GoodLot has, you guys have the Farmstead, which is full-time. Is Yonder full-time?
Yonder's full-time as well,
Yonder's full-time.
And so is Big Head.
And so is Big Head. So you got 3 full-time killer Westies.
I mean, in all fairness, I think based on our hop profiles that we grow, we have a harder time hitting those East Coast. Not hard.
What's perceived as the flavor profile that you associate with that haze and that high.
And add in the water profile that we spoke of. So I think there's but yeah, I mean, a lot of East Coast beers are those hops that we don't have access to, which are I
just want to say, when I just went to Prince Edward County with my friends not too long ago. We went to a bunch of breweries. Matron was definitely the highlight of it all.
Oh yeah.
And but no matter what brewery I go to, or no matter where I am, I never order the New England IPA first. I always order a West Coast IPA or a pale ale. I may go pale ale, but anywhere I go, it's always oh, they have a Westie. I'm definitely going to try that. I want to see what that's like before I transition what they're brewing. Yeah. And I'm a pale ale and IPA drinker primarily, so that's going to be my jam there. But Westies are always, if there's a Westie, it's going to be the first thing I order, just because it's disappeared, coming back, but just again, it seems like the dawn of craft beer was based around Cali ale yeast, and you're talking about the dawn of these New England style. When was Vermont ale yeast invented? Where did that come from? Did Hill Farmstead invent that? Where did it come from?
It came from Vermont.
Well, yeah. Or a yeast strain that sort of come to the world and has all these amazing properties that push all these beautiful notes of both malt and hops, to the forefront, I think, especially on the nose. And I mean, we're big fans, but I love West Coast. I love Westies. That's style IPA next.
I know. Now I'm
yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's and again, I'm speaking as someone who absolutely loves thick haze. I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Yeah. But it's one of those things of, if I go somewhere, I'm very much the same way. If I go somewhere I haven't been before, if someone has a Westie on tap, there's something deliberate about the fact that they have that on there. That's not that is not going to be a throwaway beer. If they've got a Westie on tap, there's something deliberate there, and that's something I want to taste.
Yeah, totally.
Which is
I also agree. I love the haze. When I first discovered New England IPAs, it's oh my god, it's hello.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Oh yeah.
I love Vermont ale yeast is probably my favorite strain in a lot of ways. Why the Farmstead's got that. I love that strain of yeast.
Does Stone's Throw have it?
Stone's Throw is also. It's not Vermont. It's a New England style yeast. It's a dry yeast.
Is it time for Stone's Throw? You guys look. You guys empty?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
I'm empty. Let's get to it. And again, look at that gorgeous lacing there.
Oh, it's stunning.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Mike Brooks.
Shout out to Mike Brooks.
Big ups, Mike. All right. We got the Stone's Throw.
I'm trying to keep up with you guys.
You're doing great, Gail. You're doing great. Are you guys okay? You feeling good?
Oh yeah, we're good. We're great.
Good.
We're good.
Loving this. Okay, so this particular beer, so this is the East Coast version with oats and wheat.
Yeah.
It's Cascade and Nuggets.
Yeah.
Nugget hops.
Yep.
Very similar grain profile in a lot of ways.
Do you love the smell of it?
But the yeast strain is the major sort of changing factor. And Mike Brooks doesn't even want to make this beer. We have to twist his arm because Gail and I love Stone's Throw so much. One of our favorite beers. And we didn't produce. We do a summer version of this that he likes making a lot more, which is called Sesh. And a pink can. It's a 4% New England style IPA. Very light, but super aroma, super flavored. Lots of dry hopping going on. But now that it's winter, we go from the 4% to the 5.8% Stone's Throw, the original companion to Yonder.
Yeah.
And Mike doesn't want to make New England. Our water profile doesn't lend itself to hanging haze in the beer.
And we don't have the right hop profiles either. So I think based on those two things, he pulled off a pretty awesome feat.
Yeah, I mean, there's
What I find interesting about this beer, and I guess most hazy East Coast leaning beers, I find them really heavy. Like
they are heavy.
And they're trending more that way these days.
Troy right now is looking at this like haze. They call that haze.
Yeah, I know. Troy would be like,
that's not really hazy, guys.
I know, it's true. Well,
hey,
but I know. But he
different interpretations.
Can we tell a side story about Troy at Badlands?
Please do.
Troy Baxter. So the very first day, and it was around the exact same time that Troy started selling beer, I think. But we opened around the same time. But
oh my God, I love this story.
We opened our bottle shop.
December 15th, 2018. I remember it.
Great memory.
December 15th, 2018.
Yes.
We converted a 20-foot shipping container into maybe the second smallest bottle shop in Canada.
Oh yeah.
The Wheeled Brew was like the smallest bottle shop in Canada. I feel like that was kind of what was going on there originally.
I love the story.
We were maybe the smallest or the second smallest, but we converted this shipping container into it. We're like, Gail comes up with most of the ideas. Like, we really need to commune with the community. Let's start selling beer directly to the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So our friend Toby converted a shipping container for us, and we open our doors December the 15th. There's, to our surprise, there's 7 people waiting for us to open the shipping container door.
It was packed within an hour.
All of whom,
it
all the
was
people.
Crazy. Obviously, it was shipping container.
Yeah, packed. There were 10 people. There were 10 people
like,
here.
No, there was. I think that our initial photo has like 17 people in it.
No, you are completely.
Okay. Here's where. But let's get to the good stuff.
We're definitely gonna fight
tonight. The good stuff is.
So we're doing about our 7th or 8th transaction in the shipping container. We're on Square for the first time. I've never been on a POS really. I've been a bartender, but never had to ring things through. And the Square fails on us. Like, it just stops working. Troy happens to be there at this moment. And at this point, there's a crush of people. There were like 20, 25 people.
Yeah, there's
a crush of people that buy this beer in these little 500 ml stubbies. And we literally go down. And Troy makes his way to the front, says, "Hey, I've got one of those little Square tabs you can plug into your phone at home. Do you want me to go? I'll go get it. I'll be right back." And he scoots home and drives back here and reopens the shop for us, basically.
Wow.
This is what I'm talking about, community co-opetition. It's like, oh my God. And he saved us that night. He was like, here, use this one. And he got us back up and running. And I'll never forget that. I was
what a champion.
I know. I was
That's so cool.
So awesome. Yeah.
We love those guys too. We love everybody. But Troy and Grace.
I'm gonna text him and tell him that. I think that he'll be happy to hear that. That's
a champion.
He's sold to the earth. I love it that you guys are working together.
The GoodLot crew is just reminding me of the night you lent them your Square on their opening night. It was awesome. I was like, oh my God, you would do that? And you did it. Anyway, it was pretty awesome.
Love it.
Speaking of New England style, super haze. But this is our New England style.
Yes, so let's get this in us.
Like everything we do, and Mike, this is intentional with Mike Brooks, I would say as well. Like, we're going to make a variety of styles, whether it's a wit, a goza, whatever, and we're going to put it into a category where you're going to be able to appreciate the distinction in flavors that we're making without it being too aggressive. And we've always kind of approached things that way for some reason. I guess, especially like when you started with the Farmstead Ale, it's like half of our neighbors drink 50 or Coors Banquet. They're farmers and they're not into the craft beer thing. It's a curiosity for them driving by. Yeah. What are these polls you put in? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And so we were really cognizant from the get-go that we want to include the other half of the community who are not into craft beer. So let's make a beer that will appeal to craft beer drinkers, but also toes the sort of center line. We're not trying to be radical in any way. We don't have a very distinct niche that we're trying to like pound away at. We're trying to experiment with different styles of beer that fit the water profile, that will be as approachable as possible. And there's so many beers, I think in that vein that Mike makes, like the wit. Like, I'm not a wit drinker. particularly, but I love nitwits, because Mike, with the coriander and the orange peel and the accentuation of that with the yeast and everything else, it's like that beer is fucking delicious. Like, it's just so interesting. It's got such a distinctive flavor without it being super aggressive in that direction, I guess. And I really do appreciate that about people who brew beer like that.
It is delicious
to get people
yeah, for sure. And we're not big wit drinkers either, but when shouts to Evan for kind of having the kind of boldness to go a bit out of outside of the trendy with the lineup that he curated for us in getting your wit on on the show there, because we were both blown away by it, and we were kind of we were not expecting to be that excited about a wit, but we both really loved it.
Well, that again, it's all Mike Brooks.
I know. If you feel when you guys were like talk tech tonight, and I was like, Brooks should be in my spot.
No, we want to talk farming. We want to talk about regenerative agriculture and organic farming.
I can talk all those things. Anyway, Mike is nerdy on the beer side.
He's a computer scientologist, so he knows a lot about technology.
Do you guys know Mike Brooks? Have you met him?
No, we don't.
Oh, no. He's a force. He's a beautiful person. He's hilarious, and
he was the head brewer at Laura. When we first met him, he was at Wellington before that. We might have met him then because he, George Eagleson, and Zach Tremaine, who was our head brewer for a while, were all working the night shift at Wellington while they were building their new facility, while they were transitioning into this big, beautiful new facility.
17, 18.
And then Mike became the head brewer at Elora, and I think really I loved Elora right out of the gate. I thought, remember the first time I went to Beer Town and they had Elora. I'm like, oh, it's like my neighborhood. Tried the beer, it was good. It was okay. And Mike elevated their beer program, I would say, dramatically. A lot of it by understanding their water chemistry in that town, also hard water, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows this so much, but we initially offered the head brewing job to Mike Brooks.
This is a funny story.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is Zach going to watch this and be like, well, I thought you hired me?
Zach take any offense.
Zach doesn't even drink beer anymore, so it doesn't matter.
You're
but
fine.
we offered the job to Mike Brooks because we liked him so much. And Mike turned us down, probably for a bunch of different reasons, but the way he expressed it to us was that I really like what you're doing. I like the direction you're going in. But I'm not done with the work I need to do at Elora. They're not quite where I need to be able to leave them. But I feel like they're locked in. Yeah, of course. So we respect him tremendously for making that decision.
But I actually think the real reason is that he was like, I like you guys, but you guys are so new. You need to get your shit together.
You may be out of business for 18 months, so I'm not really sure.
I'm not going to jump ship until you guys figure out your shit.
That's
which is very fair.
I love that.
Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like a career.
And then we found Zach Tremaine, who was so eager and so I'll do anything and try anything. And he was so exploratory with us as newbies and kind of as young, or not young, we were young, but new people in the industry. We were learning about the industry as we worked with Zach.
Commissioned the whole brew house,
really
helped out with
wonderful.
All that design.
Oh my God, he was the perfect person at the right time. And then COVID hit, and he ended up moving out east,
like everybody else.
And then, but he said, "Don't fret," because I remember the team meeting when he announced his departure, and I admit I cried. I was like, what? No, you can't leave. I was in tears. I was like, no, but we love you. We've just gotten started. And he said, no. I have another guy right behind me. He's really willing to take the job. And we were like, who? And he's like, Mike Brooks.
Mike Brooks. We tried to hire him before you.
We tried to hire him already. Oh my God, I want Mike Brooks. So that worked.
And Mike's going to be here forever. We kind of made a marriage pact with him. Hopefully he doesn't break it, but pretty much after about 6 months with Mike Brooks, we're like, we're going to marry you. We're going to bring you into our marriage. You're never going to leave. We just love a lot of it's because because he's so detail oriented.
Oh my God, if you guys know anything about Excel spreadsheets and scheduling, honestly,
he's the master.
Unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, it has just made our lives as owners, just like he's got the brew schedule set a year in advance, and we walk through it with him. But like we used to have meetings with Zach, and this was us too, like a reflection
like
on
a jazz
us.
band.
We would have meetings, our Tuesday meetings, and we'd be like, "What are we going to brew this week?" And you're like, "Oh, I guess okay, we'll brew this." And I guess we should order the malt and race around and get all.
I've got this malt left over. How do you guys feel about brewing a box?
Yeah, like it was so all over the place. And then Mike came on and he was just like, "All right, guys, okay,
so dialed.
Shed all of this. And here's what we're doing. You gotta and it dialed us in as owners too."
Like, and a lot of people in the industry will tell you that we have the cleanest brewery in the industry, and maybe that's a claim people make. I don't know. I don't talk to people in the industry all that much for the field all the time, but his floors are so impeccably clean. Like he just brought this whole paradigm of operation, which was just like so sanitary, and all our beer was always clean. Everything was fine, but it's like he just like upped the whole game.
The chickens are not allowed.
Chickens are not allowed in the brewery, nor is the dog.
That's probably for the best. That's probably for the best.
I even let have a cat in the brewery, honestly.
Oh man, like as soon as you started like talking about Excel, like I'm a data analyst in my in my real life, and and I also do all of the scheduling for the podcast. So I feel like Mike and I would get along pretty well.
Oh,
yes,
you guys,
would. Oh yes,
you guys would align. So yeah, and it has made my life so much better. I love it. I love it all. I'm a little bit of an Excel nerd too, so yeah, Brooks and I get along.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great to have
formula I put in the cell.
Yeah. Check this formula, bro. Yeah,
yeah.
Honestly, I can only imagine how helpful that is, because I feel like sometimes like you talk to different brewers. Some breweries plan, like you said, a year in advance, and some are like, I don't know what we're brewing this week, and it's sort of like a bit of a mix, and it depends what works. But there's probably a lot to be said for the organization and just have that feeling of understanding what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't want to discredit the flavor for like experimentation. So Brooks is so organized that he'll leave a block and be like, this one is to be decided, but he's got it in the brew schedule. And then as time goes on, then we kind of work through it. It's just the mindset is so different, and it's so much less chaotic. It actually has allowed us as owners who live on our property, I might add, it's just added a level of like normalcy to running a business. Like it's like, okay, we're walking into this meeting and I know that we're going to talk about this outstanding brew that is coming down the pipe, versus walking into a meeting and being like, what do we need to order to get picked up in 3 days? There was just so much chaos in the beginning. And I think that is as a reflection of any new owner, of like not knowing the industry, not knowing your contacts, not knowing, all that stuff. And it's no discredit to Zach, because he was game for everything and anything. And so he was the proper person in that role. Like as I said, I cried when he said that he was leaving, but there is something just more professional and more intentional about our process now, about what is coming down the pipe and what it is, like why do we want to brew it, and what can is it going in, and what's the packaging, and let's get Laura on board, and all of those things. It just feels so much more thought out and intentional. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's important for a business to feel that way, and to know that, like, you want to know what's happening next, and you want to know what your cash flow is looking like, and what ingredients you need, and what that's going to result in, as opposed to flying by the seat of your pants. And I think for some businesses it could work, but I think for a brewery, the way you just described that, Gail, exactly, like in 3 days we need all of this malt here, and if we don't, then we can't brew this fucking beer. And I can only imagine the stress that would be involved in that. I just don't think that's probably healthy for sort of a functioning business. And you also want to plan it out, and you want to know, like, all right, well, summers are crazy, and to prepare for the summer, we need to go and make Philsner a whole bunch more, and then we need to do this and da. Like, yeah, you need to sort of have that planning. So it's very cool that you found someone that sort of maybe gravitates towards the planning side of things, and that can keep you guys on track. And then to be able to sort of, like, 12 months is pretty wild. I feel like that is, I don't know if you've spoke to fellow breweries, other breweries that do that, but I imagine that's an outlier. I don't know if I've ever, even Sawdust City was the wildest one, and they were like 9-10 months ahead, and I thought that was kind of like unheard of.
Mike, 12 months. He's 12, if not 14 months. Like I know what we're going to brew. I don't think it's actually been published yet, but January, February, we'll have a sense, especially because of the loggers. Those get like locked in places, obviously, so that's pretty clear. And he will tell, BSG is our main supplier because it's in Guelph. Like, we get most of our malts from those guys, and he will send BSG his order list for the entire year in sometime in November. So coming up in the next few weeks, they'll know exactly what his order is. They have commented to him, you're the first person who lines up your orders every year. He's extremely organized, which I think, shows in his brewing at the same time, like how detail oriented he is. And again, we're playing with the terroir of seasonality, of our groundwater, of local ingredients. And so beers are going to be unique and different and interesting, and not to everyone's liking necessarily. But it's all very authentic in terms of like the approach that's being taken here. And Mike has really bought into that. While we're a jazz band, like, we're going to improvise as we go, has created a structure for us that, again, you're talking the business of beer, the cash flow, it's like the low margin business. How are you going to survive to be here for another year, which and everybody will tell you, the most successful to the newest. You really have to be very sharp in how you approach it if you're going to survive ultimately, and find your niche and find where you can create value for your community and the rest of the industry, I guess, your suppliers and your customers, ultimately to try to carve out a niche that is going to be legacy ultimately, if you can be, like a Sawdust City is, like Sawdust will be there forever. Sam will theoretically be there forever, and they're going to make amazing beer forever because they've set this amazing parameters of how they operate and how they manage what they're doing. Like, they're definitely like sort of an aspiration, I think, for a lot of people, like Hill Farmstead is, which you mentioned earlier, Craig. Like, Hill Farmstead, globally the greatest brewery in the world twice in a row, like tiny little brewery in Vermont. You're like, whoa, those are the people you want to go and talk to and understand and get their philosophies on how they're operating and approaching the art and craft and science of what beer making and farming collectively is, I guess.
Yeah, you're so right. And having those conversations is with people in the industry is sort of how that knowledge spreads around a little bit more, and you can share those best practices and be like, hey, we're doing this for this reason. Like, oh wow, I never considered that. And I like that. And I like that you're saying that breweries will be around. I think that's, as you were sort of saying it, I was picturing, like, I never really thought of it as much like this. I'm like, you just kind of like, I don't know, we just get malt in and you just fucking just be like, oh, I'm just going to take some of this and do some stuff. Like, it's not
we were. I'll run to the store right now. Literally Tuesday meeting. Like, okay, I will run to the supplier. BSG with Gilbertson and Page at that point, and Fergus. Well, listen, I'll drive to Gilbertson and Page right now and grab those 18 bags of malt. I'll be back by like 1, and you can start brewing at 2. That's how we were operating at the beginning, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that being a little too much to manage. Whilst it's maybe fun and like reactionary, it's probably not an optimal way to grow a solid, business for you guys. And And that level of stress is fine for a little bit when it happens, but if it's a consistent, like, ongoing thing,
not sustainable.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not the move at all, and it's very cool. It's interesting to hear this side. To be honest, I don't even know if that's something that we've talked about before. And it almost like we have a season, because you mentioned the business side. We have a season of the podcast called The Business of Beer, where we talk about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that could even be something that we could get you guys on in the future, and we could have you guys and somebody else, like, we usually pair it up and then talk about something, and like organization. Whilst it's maybe arguably boring, I don't know, Gail, you seem pretty excited about it, and I know Nate was as well.
It's funny, like, I just, like,
Can I present my Excel formula?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, you know, and also when you were saying that, I was reflecting on those the first year and a half, maybe 2 years, and I was so proud of what we were producing because of the sweat and tears and love that was going in. But honestly, like, were they good beers? No, they weren't. And here's the thing, when people are so quick to judge breweries when they open, right? Like, oh, they opened, they went there and their beer's not that great. And I'm like,
they're savage.
Give them like a little, like, give them a couple of years to figure out their water, to figure out their process. And that's why actually monobrewing is so impressive, because I'm like, I remember going there within the first 8 months, and I was like, holy shit. Yeah. You're fucking pulling off.
You have 11 beers and they're all pretty damn good.
I was like, how do you, like, because I know those first few years, like, people were like, oh, this is so great. I'm like, yeah, great. Not really. We're going to get there. Truthfully, like, you have to, like, hone it in.
First lager we made. I don't know.
Yeah, and so it's just like, and then also the reflection of not having your processes down, like all of those things. So it's just like a funny chemistry. And so I'm really happy with where we are now. And I do think it is in part to Mike, for sure. But it is also in part to us as owners. Now we're starting to understand the industry. We now know where your role is, my role is.
That's true.
Like, all of those things, like, on who does what. And, like, we're 7 years in. So it's like, okay, now we've kind of know our shit a little bit.
And we have an amazing team. Like, we literally are surrounded by people who are, you know, top tier for what they're doing. Like Danielle and Luke and Mike and Monica and you and me and Carly. You know, that little collective. Like, there's only 7 people who work here full time, I think. And they're all, you know, we're all underpaid and overworked, as is the sort of nature of this business. But amazing people, sort of your family, and they're all in it for the same reasons. They understand the mission of what we're doing between terroir and sustainability and community support, and makes it all very worthwhile ultimately.
Yeah. I know that's the one thing I was going to say. As a business owner, I have been so overwhelmed with how much fun it has been to own this business within our community. I always knew when we opened our patio, I was like, oh, this would be a great meeting space. But it has been so much more than that. Like, it has been so, like, I feel so connected to the farming community, but also brewing community, but also, like, I don't know, it's just been such a highlight of, I don't know how to express it.
Well, I will try. It was revelatory.
Like, I put my hand up to host events on, like, a Wednesday night. So I'm like, I'll run trivia. Like, I love it. Like, it's fun. Like, it's really fun to meet your neighbors and watch your neighbors not realize that they live on the same road and haven't known each other for whatever, and then they come together often. Like, and you're like, oh, you made that connection. Like,
we haven't had a wedding here of people who met here yet. That would be the next level.
Oh no, Steve and Amanda.
They didn't meet here. We've had lots of weddings here and lots of love fests here, but not 2 people who met. But the revelatory part for me very early on was that community. I mean, and every brewery, this is not the exception. It's like every brewery has this in their community, which is why someone said to me the other day, it's like, it's the new church, this is the new gathering spot.
Yeah.
You used to go to your church, but now I go to my local brewery because I'm going to find people that I want to hang out with there. I'm going to make new friends. And literally in the first couple of weeks in 2019, when we opened our first beer garden, even or when we'd open the shipping container bottle shop and then the beer garden opened, and people, as Gail just said, who didn't know each other, lived blocks away from each other, became best friends. Literally. And we did, I remember in that very first summer, we hosted a wedding at the end of 2019, and people who had just met each other in our patio in July were attending the wedding of these people in September on our patio. I was like, oh my God, this is a whole other element of what we're doing in terms of building this community sense and these connections, and this, that part is maybe the most special part of it all.
It's so fun. It's really wonderful. Yeah. And you guys know it because you are going. You're patrons. Like, how fun they are. Like, you're local or not your local, you will meet people at breweries. Like, it's a fun, easy place, right? Like, Anyway,
people
that has been
down. We met someone. There was a lady sitting next to us at GoodLot who was by herself. I forgot her story, but she was like, I think me and Tiffany went off to get the food. So Tiffany's mom we came back and they were both chatting, and it's like she just moved back from Vancouver or something like that.
Yeah, that's woman who just moved to Guelph to help her father.
That's exactly her. That's her. Yep. Help her father. And she had her boyfriend didn't want to move back over here because her boyfriend was from over there. So she was like by herself, and she was just going to a brewery. And I think like, that's sick, man. It's like a beautiful day and you just went by yourself and then you just chat. And she was lovely. We all chatted for the time that we came back.
And I like to think that GoodLot presents the place where you can go solo and it's fine. Like, you're not going to be an outcast. Like, you can find your neighbor. We intentionally built, and I know many breweries do this, but there's a reason behind it. Like, those communal tables mean something, right? Where you have to belly up beside your neighbor and be like, hey, where are you from? I love that. Like, it's so lovely. Anyway, it has been a huge joy in my life to have that aspect.
That's why we built big tables.
I know. Yeah. I love it.
Tables. I love it.
Brilliant.
How about we take a real quick bathroom break, because I feel like it's brewing.
It's about that time.
And then it's about that time, and then we'll grab that porter.
Happy I didn't have to call
it. We read your mind. All right, guys, we'll be back.
All right,
and we are back, y'all. We are back.
And we're back.
And it is dark beer time, folks.
Oh yeah.
Getting it
yummy.
into this gem of a porter. Oof. Love Pippa. Me a good porter.
Pippa.
Okay, so Pippa named for our black lab that we rescued in the first this farm. And she's sort of memorialized in this beer.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Love the pups.
So another wet hop beer. Again,
love that.
Mash edition. We actually do this beer every year. First time we've made a wet hop beer, I believe. And
I don't know if I've ever had a wet hop porter before.
I don't know if I have either, actually, until this year.
Don't know if they existed.
Stout with like 4.7% dark, roasty, chocolate, soft. Our stout comes out tomorrow. Actually, we're patching our stout tomorrow, so just like a more accentuated version of this beer, but they're not super dissimilar. But it's light, it's approachable, and I've had so many people I've met at farmers markets primarily who are just like, I do not like dark beers. I do not like dark beers. Like, well, if you close your eyes and don't look at the color, it's not really the description of the beer. The color is not really the flavor profile.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, I love coffee. I love chocolate. Oh, I really like that. It's light and approachable. So we do this every year. It's been named Pippa, our porter, for the last 4 years now, maybe. Cheers to you.
Cheers, you guys.
Cheers. Get that in you.
like little tan head on there. It's like it's not overwhelming. And again, I love Guinness. Like Guinness is my #1 beer, but I love this beer because it's just so approachable. Again, I don't really get the wet hops off it so much. I don't know if the mash hops really.
Well, there's two things you just brought up
that
there
oily part
that I want to talk about.
Roll.
I know. So #1, I love how you were like, people often want to talk about color as flavor. It's so true. It drives me insane.
Yeah.
Like when you're trying to describe a beer and they're like, well, but what color is it? I'm like, well, hold on. It's just
You're saying dark isn't the flavor?
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny thing. Anyway, but and the other thing is farmers market. We have learned in the last couple of years, why would we ever do a beer festival again when you're splitting tokens and fees and all this stuff to serve someone this much beer, when at a farmer's market, you can literally hand them a 6-pack or a 12-pack or a case. It's like the farmer's market has like changed the landscape, I think, of beer festivals. Like I don't ever really want to go to a beer festival anymore. Like it's a funny thing.
Early on, it's like, can you imagine if we could sell beer at farmers markets like BQA was doing and like cider people were doing? Yeah. Oh, that'd be amazing. And Doug Ford brought that in, as like he's done with a lot of liberalization of alcohol distribution. And we don't do beer festivals at all anymore. It's money losing. We don't have a marketing budget, so we can't really afford to lose money at anything we do.
The beer festivals really are more marketing, whereas a farmer's market, you actually, and we often go ourselves as owners, because it's super great engagement. You get to like have one-on-one where you get to walk people through. You're not like, there's no lineup behind these people. You get to like taste test, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm a farmer market bandwagon.
Well, I think you're kind of being triggered because I remember those first conversations about, well, the color is not necessarily the driver of the flavor. There's really dark blockers that, if you close your eyes, you really wouldn't know it was a dark beer.
It's true. When you said that, I was like, oh, we're at a farmer's market.
I think that's what triggered you on that. Oh, dark beers. It's be heavy. We do a lot of we don't do a lot of farmers markets. We do St. Lawrence markets. That was like a huge deal for us. St. Lawrence market, which hasn't sold beer since pre-prohibition, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Met Gail at Leslieville Farmers Market.
Yeah.
It's like Daniel showed up. It's like, oh, wow, what? This is exactly what I need at my market. What market you at? St. Lawrence market. Like, oh my goodness.
Farm raised beer.
St. Lawrence market.
Yeah.
So we've been doing the St. Lawrence market for the past 2 years. And that's sort of like our Toronto bottle shop. Every 2 weeks we have a bottle shop in Toronto where we bring different beers every 2 weeks. So it's never a repeat for the most part, except for a few of the cores, I guess. And we love that scene. The farmers market's been so fun to be a part of that community.
Yeah.
Because exactly, this is our tribe. Like, these are the people looking to connect with farmers. Like, we make farm beer.
Yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy them. Yeah, people
really
that are interested, engaged, and not always big drinkers, but they're like, they love locavore, or they're interested in our practices, or they're just curious.
Because you're a farmer.
Yeah, because it's been pretty eye-opening. It's been fun.
That's awesome. That makes so much sense. Like, I never really thought of it like that. Like, essentially, this is a product of a farm, so it's completely in the right world by being in a farmer's market. And that's your pure. It's like, it's almost like it's cooler because it's appealing to the opposite. You mentioned a festival, Gail. Like, going to a festival, like, cool. Yeah. That's great, but they're already there to drink beer, and they're already probably relatively well-versed on craft beer. But what you're doing by going to a farmer's market is introducing a whole new demographic of people who are maybe gateway drinkers. Maybe they have, occasionally drink, not obsessed with it or whatever. And then they're like, oh, wow, this is really fun. Oh, you grow these hops? Like, I think that's, I hadn't thought of it with that framing. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it elevates that experience, I think, for people that, like you said, that aren't big drinkers, but if they're going to drink, they'd rather drink something that they know who's growing it. They've met the owners. Like there's this connection that, and as I said, like I think with beer festivals, I'm kind of tired of the drunkenness at some of them. Like it's just like you're just one of, like, it's funny. Sometimes the organizers will be like, oh, and this year we've added on 20 new breweries. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Like, so I'm going to be one of 50 this year.
Further dilution.
Like, yeah, it's a tough sell these days for me. I just don't feel, and then you get a token and you can only serve like whatever amount. And then you have to split that with the organizer. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. I mean, and I guess in the early days, we did do a ton of them because it is great marketing. But nowadays, I just feel like I'm not interested.
We don't do beer festivals. Except Brickworks.
I heard that's beautiful out there.
Yeah, they did a sustainable brewery beer festival last year, so we signed up for that because, like, well, you're focusing on sustainability.
Yeah.
It makes sense that we can highlight and work with our partners in that endeavor to try and save the planet together. But otherwise, we don't do beer festivals at all. We would if we could spend the money on marketing, hire someone to go and do this, but we can't. We're too small for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's probably a pretty sweet segue into the final thing that we want to make sure we touched on tonight was the sustainability of the brewery and that approach. Do you guys want to maybe break that down, like what it means to you, why it's important, and physically what it is, like actually what makes it sustainable, whether it's like the hops or any other element of the process?
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Start with the agriculture part.
Sure, that's the foundation.
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept is that we are going to replenish the soil and definitely not load chemicals into it. So when Gail's always been she's the CFO, the chief farming officer, because I worked off the farm for a good portion of the beginning of our farming practice. And Gail I've been working for environmental causes my whole career, but Gail early on in this endeavor was like, we're going to be completely organic. And growing hops organically is very challenging. Growing hops in Ontario is generally challenging as a hop farmer, but growing them organically, way fewer tools in your toolbox. And so it's a bit of a heavy lift. And so Gail went out, I'm just going to speak for you in this part, but
I'm going to cut you off.
I hope so. You went off and really became super knowledgeable about organic farming practices, which transitioned into regenerative farming practices and growing that with a bunch of other local farmers. You want to take off?
So the first year, actually it was the second year that we grew hops. And I had been following the conventional farming methods, which at that time, if I wanted to spray some fungicides and herbicides, not having a tractor that was enclosed, I needed to be in a hazmat suit, literally covered. And I remember buying one and getting in it. And I remember my chickens and my dog, and I had a young baby, and I was like out in the field trying to spray this shit, and I was like, I can't fucking do this. Like this is just so, I don't know, it made my mind just like, if I'm supposed to be in a hazmat suit, what am I spraying on these plants and flowers that ultimately are going into our beer that we're drinking? Like it just didn't, I struggled. And I went to Amafra and said, okay, so this isn't going to work for me in my setup. So I'm going to grow organically. And they looked at me like, you can't really do that with hops. I was like, watch me. Like, I'm going to figure this out. Anyway, it was a challenge. And there were a couple other growers doing it, not too many, but we kind of got together, Nicholas being one of them. And we just researched the shit out of it, kind of learned as we went, but it was an evolution, and just like our beer, my hops in the first few years probably weren't the best. But over time, when I started to learn the skill and the process, so ultimately I went from conventional growing the first year, segued into organic growing, uncertified, because it wasn't worth the money to certify. And then now I'm doing more regenerative farming, which are very basic principles, which are, no chemicals, keep your soil covered, no-till, feed your soil biology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to maybe what's the actual difference between organic and regenerative?
So yeah, great question. So organic still is treating the plant. So they're still focusing on non-chemical inputs versus regenerative is treating your soil. So it's a little bit like, instead of a regular doctor, you're going to a homeopath. Like, you're treating the foundation of the growth,
like
versus
functional medicine.
The plant. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, like in organic farming, you're still doing foliar feed. So there's a fish emulsion that we put into a sprayer. It's like fish poop, basically. Mix it with water, maybe a little bit of soap for binding. And we go out in the field still, and we still spray. We still mist this across all the plants. They're supposed to help with some bug resistance, but mostly giving nutrients at the leaf level. Whereas regenerative agriculture, everything is about the biology of the soil, everything below this amazing microorganism universe that's going on below the soil. Yeah. And if you feed that exclusively, really focus only on that. We haven't done a foliar spray in 4 years now, probably.
Yeah, you're building up its own immunity so that it's going to be pest resistant and disease resistant. And
the plant gets all the vitamins that it needs out of the soil. So even though we're still going to have downy mildew, we're still going to have leaf hoppers, we're still going to have aphids, we're still going to get all the shit that comes with growing hops, the plant itself can draw so much nutrients. It's like, imagine living in a smoggy town, but I eat so well, I exercise, I do all the right things. So even though there's a smog, I'm going to be less affected by the smog in some ways, because my body has the resilience to sort of fight off the negative impacts of that. So working with the soil, sort of, is that a proper analogy?
Yeah.
I've never made that analogy before.
And then, but in addition, you're also sequestering all the carbon into the soil, which is more of a climate, long-term. So all those practices actually help retain carbon in the soil. So there's a long-term effect to it.
So part of all the, this whole carbon-free operation we're trying to build here, we have built. The root for Gail is that she has studied with the Aaron Soil Health Coalition over the beginning of her transition into regenerative agriculture. She monitored the CO2 levels in her soil every year, and she could see the CO2 levels rising in her soil year by year. Yeah. Spending less money year by year, maybe a little bit more physical effort, but less money year by year on inputs. And then we saw the output of the hops themselves, with way less work on them aside from in the soil, start to increase simultaneously. So you can kind of see this transition where we're changing our practices, taking this homeopathic, I like that, homeopathic approach instead. Yeah. We're spending less money, but we're seeing better yields. And I did not believe it originally when Gail said this is going to be a 7-year transition where we're going to start really working with biochar and other components to build the soil manure up. And by year 3, pretty sure, year 3, we decided to be very hands-off because Gail felt she transitioned over 3 years to this new practice. Year 3, we used to baby these hops so much. I mean, literally out there with clippers, just getting that last weed out.
Oh, wow.
And 3 years, I mean, it's very hands-on, but by year 3, we decided to be very hands-off. which we used to laugh at. I saw other people's
Partly
yards,
because
look at all
really
that grass.
busy.
And it's actually, coincidentally, it was the year we started the brewery.
Yeah,
so it was, like,
it was super busy.
Suddenly we didn't have as much time in the hop yard, and our yields were the best we've ever had, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, second best that year. We were like, wow, we've done almost nothing. We've done no inputs. We haven't spent that time. Yet the plants themselves, because the soil was being fed.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been really an interesting, and there's a community out here of other like-minded farmers, which have been really inspiring, and we kind of work together and our processes of like what works, what doesn't work. We trade off, we co-share on some stuff.
That's good.
Great. Yeah.
So
Anyway, it's like anything that's longer term, bigger picture. It's work in progress, and every year we're just adding little amendments and trying new things. But what's pretty cool, actually, there was someone that came by today when I was putting the worm manure on, and they were like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know all the food waste that you made and everyone made this summer? It's closed loop system. So we actually have a gal that comes and picks up all our waste, all our food and carbon waste weekly, takes it to her farm, feeds it to her worms. It's the poop loop. So they shit it out and then they, bag it up. And I was literally putting all our food and carbon waste back on my fields today as my closing winter activity. And it was just it's such a good feeling. I like to think it works. I think it does, but it's the fact that I'm able to put waste into that space and back out onto our farm is pretty incredible. Yeah, I love it. Anyway.
So sustainability wise, I mean, just because that's where this open, like that's the farming aspect, I'd say, as much as anything, is carbon sequestration, organic, no-till, et cetera, and that's the foundation of everything that we've done here. And then we decided that we were going to add before the manufacturing of beer on this farm, we were 100% carbon free. We have 10 kilowatts of solar we put in. We're all electric. There's no combustion of fossil fuels on this farm. And we generated way more electrons, kilowatt hours per year than we consumed on the farms. We're like literally putting green goodness onto the grid. Yeah. And then we decided to open a brewery. We did a lot of research in terms of the carbon impact. Like, well, we're carbon free right now on this farm. We're going to add this other manufacturing process suddenly. How are we going to mitigate carbon load that way? And we did a lot of research, worked with some experts on this. And the first thing we did was go all electric. And because we're out in the country, we don't have gas lines out here. We have power lines. And even though like natural gas, kilojoule energy for boiling wort is a bit more efficient than electricity. Think of resistance heat that you use with electricity to boil a pot of tea. So we had to kind of overcome that part. So we put another 10 kilowatts of solar in. We went all electric with everything that we built, so we could really monitor very clearly the electrons going in each direction to know what carbon impact we were having. We had all of our equipment manufactured by HTP in Cambridge. We bought half of the gear that we bought for the brewery was used and shipped off to Japan like 27 years ago by HTP out of Cambridge. And that place was closing, Japanese brew pub. We bought all the equipment, shipped it back to Cambridge from Japan, and had it retooled and brought up to us. We had a brew house built in Cambridge by HTP. And then one of the things we did with that was to like reclaim all the steam, which is not uncommon. It's not like rocket science, but instead of blowing steam to atmosphere, which you see at the Molson plant at 427 and 401, we recapture all that steam and we pull cold water out of the ground, cross the steam and put it into the hot liquor tank to prepare our hot water for the next day. And we got like a 70-degree bump on the water temperature just by using the waste steam in the brewing process. We started doing what I guess is called a spunding. So German purity laws, you can't add CO2 to the beer to carbonate. So it's like use the CO2 that's bubbling out of the beer with the yeast. So we close the fermentation tank to re-immerse the CO2 into the beer to blow less CO2 to atmosphere. Talked about this nitrogen generator that we put in last year to make our own beer gas to reduce our CO2 use by 35% roughly, I guess, as well. What else do we do here? The closed loop system parts, like the food, we send all of our spent grain to a farm down the road, and then we take meat back from that farm and put it into the food truck. So closed loop, the food waste to the worms to soil back to here. We're trying to cross off every single thing we can in the manufacturing process to eliminate our carbon impact, because we really believe this is foundational to both the farming practice and to the beer manufacturing, is that the 21st century is, carbon overloaded, obviously. We're about to blow past 1.5 degrees Celsius, on the planet. And we cannot add carbon load to the planet. We have to mitigate all of this. And so we do it all, we have 80% of our electricity is generated on site by solar PV, and we buy 20% from Bullfrog Power, which is a green power generator that sells credits to the grid. So we're just trying to really not have a negative impact on the planet physically as much as anything, while making delicious beer and providing a safe space for everyone to come together and live in peace and love.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we didn't want to make a business that was going to be a drain. We were like, how can we do this in the most positive way in terms of the environment long term?
I love that. Thank you for breaking
It's a big differentiation too, in some ways. Sorry.
Is it? I mean, I don't know.
We're trying to drive other people to adopt the same process, like Carbon Brew. Have you guys talked to Carbon Brewing yet? Carbon with a K?
No, I know of them for sure.
So I was in touch with them a couple of years ago, and and found out their story and everything. That was pretty cool. They had ambitions to become the first carbon negative brewery in Ontario.
Yeah, I saw somebody. I don't know who it was. I feel like they were in Ontario, but they were in Ontario, and they slapped a label, or they made a post about. I should know more about this, but the first certified carbon neutral brewery in Canada, maybe. Which I thought was super rad. I'm like, oh my god, I need to go talk to her, and I need more, more info, because we're not that. We don't.
Carbon?
No, it wasn't Carbon. I haven't.
Was it those guys? There was one in the Thousand Islands up near Kingston that were called I want to say the word that's coming to my head is it's not this, but it's Arbor, ARBOR, but some sort of.
You're thinking of our brew.
Our brew.
Oh, Erebrew.
Yeah,
them guys.
Yeah,
they were solar or something.
Yeah, they're a solar thing.
Those guys. I think they're off grid. And
off grid, that makes sense.
Literally not connected to the grid. They're brewing on I'd say a 1 or 2 barrel system. To generate that much electricity to boil water, if you're not going to combust fossil fuels, we could not go to, I guess if we got 3-phase power here, could we go to a 20 barrel system? Maybe, but that's a huge amount of electricity to boil 1,000 liters of liquid. To go to 2,000 liters is a major lift. Those guys, I really want to go see those guys. And Big Spruce and
Big Spruce.
Cape Breton. They're organic. Awesome, those guys.
Have you guys interviewed them before, Big Spruce?
Not yet, no.
Well, yeah.
We're big fans.
No.
Big Spruce. Okay.
All right, we got them on the list.
They're in the LCBO. Only SKU in the LCBO, I would say that everything is grown on their property. I mean, their harvest ale that's in the LCBO. It's they grow the grains, they grow the hops. I don't know if it's a house strain of yeast or not, and it's their water. That's the dream.
Yeah.
That is that's the dream, to be able to do that. But we don't have enough land to grow the grains.
We don't have the right equipment. Those guys have big machinery.
Well, they're 250-year-old farm.
Different vibe.
Yeah. We love them all.
Yeah.
I love that. Once again, thank you guys for breaking that down. I just feel like that's it's super cool to hear all about that side, because I feel like that's something we haven't really touched on here on the pod at all, ever.
Not really, no.
It's great to have that context. So thank you so much for that. But bringing this bad boy home. We're coming in on 3 hours. I know it's sort of late for everybody. Well, you know, it flies by, right? You know how it goes.
Oh yeah.
It does.
It's been really cool having you guys on it and really going through all of these beers, just looking at the different styles we tried tonight. Like, it's a bit of everything, and I feel like we really got a solid picture of what it is that you guys do, and it's just fantastic. You know, it's cool to try it out of the can and have this conversation with you guys. Now I've had that other separate experience of going to the brewery and just soaking the vibes up there as well. So it's very cool, guys. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate you both.
Yeah, this has really been no, this has really been a genuine pleasure, and it's making me all the more motivated to get out to see you guys as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your time, your insight, and all the delicious beer tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Privilege is ours. Thank you guys for what you're doing to promote this industry. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. It's
absolutely our pleasure.
Truly. Is there anything else you want to let people know that's coming up next? That's, you know, anything to keep an eye out for? Obviously, this episode will come out in not next week, but the week after. So it's pretty soon. Leading up to the holidays, is there anything or?
Not really. Nothing super immediate. But we did a beer last year. We do a sap beer every year. We replaced all the water with maple sap, and we used it in a smaller scale pilot system, plant our own trees and do that. Last year we expanded that with the Credit Valley Conservation Authority and this awesome group called Wilder, where we got 2,000 liters of maple sap. First run of the season, we made this awesome IPA with it, 6.5, I think.
High volume.
Tree Hug Wilder Sap Ale. We were actually on CBC Metro Morning with it last year. We're the first and last beer company to crack a beer open and drink it on air at 7 a.m. on the CBC. They literally banned that practice after we were on. They're like, we don't think it's a good idea to be cracking beers at 7 a.m. on the CBC when people are driving to work. But
that's kind of gangster, to be honest.
No, I love that.
That beer is coming out. We're going to do that every year. I mean, so it's not immediate. It's not coming out until May. But all the money from that beer goes towards the Credit Valley Conservation Authority and their work to preserve wetlands, particularly, and flood protection for the GTA. And so look out for that beer when it comes out in the spring. First, as soon as the sap starts flowing, 4 weeks later, there's going to be a delicious sap beer, which is an awesome concept, you know, in terms of terroir.
Oh, that is an awesome concept for sure, and we'll definitely be keeping our eyes out for that.
That is super killer. Yeah. Where can everybody find GoodLot online and in real life?
Ooh, good question.
In real life, we're at 18825 Jaws Creek Road in Caledon. So it's the northwest corner of Caledon, which is the north edge of Peel region. So we're just below Orangeville and just above Brampton. And online, we're goodlot.beer. And all the emails off the website come to Gail or I. And we deliver beer across the province through our partner, Small Batch Dispatch.
That's true.
That's what I was about to ask. Can people order it no matter where they are? They can order it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In the province of Ontario.
In the province of Ontario, absolutely. And if there's like a store, like a cool beer store that, you know, somebody likes in a place, is that, you know, can they request it from there and then they'll reach out? Is that something that you guys are 100%. Participating in?
I mean, not TBS so much, but LCBO for sure.
Yeah.
LCBO. Okay. I was even thinking LCBO, independent more, but
LCBO, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah. We deliver personally within 100-kilometer radius, I think, of our farm. Generally, Luke's out on the road 4 days a week. And me, and then people can request it, and it'll be Gail or myself or Luke delivering it usually.
Not me, usually.
Guys, like not happening. I got soil to deal with.
you or Luke, but
Okay.
No, that makes sense. That's amazing. So yes, guys, make sure you check them out. You can get your orders in, ask around for it, follow them online. Stick around after we'll wrap this up, and then we'll wrap it up off air. But Gail and Phil, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Yes,
God.
thank you so much. My goodness, this has been an absolute pleasure.
Pretty well toasty over here.
You're gonna sleep well tonight, eh?
Yeah. That's
That
not
was-
the best again.
I get it. No, it's great. It was
Thank you so much.
so welcome, and
Our
once
pleasure.
again, thank you guys for taking the time and for the beers are just, it's so cool, and you guys are doing something really fun, and you're providing a genuine, like, talking to you now tonight and just hearing how much you care about all of these things. I'm just like, oh, this all adds up. No wonder it's such a fantastic experience, and the staff was so lovely, and you've got the phenomenal food and the diverse patrons, and it's wonderful. I just think that businesses like you guys are really what makes craft beer amazing. So thank you guys for doing it and rolling the dice on this crazy industry, and making it work whilst also sticking to your morals and your ethics as far as the sustainability and stuff. And I think you're like role models that people should be looking at. And
absolutely,
a ton of respect for you both for this. And I love we love it. Very, very cool. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So stick around. We'll wrap up after. But guys, thank you so much for. Whoa, look, I got aggressive there. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, hit that notification bell, Nathaniel.
Ding.
So you know when the new drops. Follow us everywhere at BAOS Podcast, at Nathan Does Beer. Check out GoodLot everywhere. Give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts just for these wonderful things. See, look, Gail's pointing. She knows what's up. She's a YouTuber. Point down. That's what.
Figure it out.
Just basically straight down, because there's like the subscribe button and the thumbs up somewhere down there. And get these beers. Get those beers. Which way? They're over there. No, they're there. That's where they are. I can't do it. I don't know. I'm fine.
We're right there.
All right. Love y'all. See you in the next one. Peace, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.